Naomi has always loved to dream. Since childhood, the girl grew up a very gentle nature. She had a wonderful character, and almost always she was hovering somewhere in the clouds. Naomi saw what kind of family she had and wanted to have everything the same. Her beloved husband, her children. "Mom, I'm going to the library," she often said. And indeed, she would go to the library, pick up some women's novel, sit and read it right there. "Daughter, don't you want to go to the movies?" her mother would ask her on weekends. Of course, Naomi liked it very much when she and her mother went out, watched a movie, and then discussed it. If the movie was about love, often, both woman and girl cried, even if there was a happy ending. "Naomi, what do you want to be?" her mother asked her when she was already in high school. "I love children and I want to spend my life with them," she said. That's wonderful. Her mom approved of her choice. The girl was exemplary. She almost never went out, only sometimes with girls at discos, which were held at school or so, in the yard to sit and chat at the table. They were four friends: Naomi, Natalie, Casey, and Nancy. Nobody singled anyone out. They all talked the same way. "Hi." They came by to pick up Naomi one night. "I probably won't go out tonight," Naomi told them, because she wanted to spend the evening with her mom. She said there was a movie on TV that she'd been wanting to see for a long time. "Come on, let's go. You'll have time to watch it." The girls kept up with her. "Okay, I guess Mom won't be offended." She went to change. Of course, Mom wasn't offended. She understood that the girls are young. They want to go out. When else will they have such an age? And now, when there was only a little bit left till the end of school, it was necessary to give her daughter some freedom. "Well, are we going to the disco right away?" Nancy asked everyone. "Where else would you like to go?" Naomi turned to her. "Don't you know that there is a new cafe in our town where there are different desserts and ice cream? We can go there," looked at her friend's watch. "Sure, let's go. I haven't been there," Naomi said, and thought to herself that her mother usually found out that there was something new in town, and they went there. The girls came to the cafe, sat down at a table, ordered ice cream, sat enjoying the cold dessert. At this moment, no one even thought how their lives would turn out, what would happen. But for Naomi, this day was fateful. At some point, the bell above the door jingled. Everyone turned their attention there. A group of guys entered the room. One was tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed. Naomi herself doesn't know why she paid attention to him then, but she really liked the guy. The guys didn't pay any attention to the girls. They walked over, sat down at a table, and began to discuss some topics of their own. Naomi nudged Nancy in the side. "What?" Turned to her. "Where the hell are you?" The girls laughed. "Did you see the guys who just came in?" Naomi pointed to the table where the young men were sitting with her eyes. "And what?" they asked. "That tall one over there." The girl spoke in a half whisper. "Did you like him?" All the others who sat with Naomi at the table were smiling. Naomi blushed because they had never talked about liking guys before. Maybe they had, but everyone kept quiet. "Oh, Naomi, you're kidding. Is it love at first sight?" Natalie had already finished her ice cream and was waiting for everyone else to do the same. "Why not?" Naomi regretted telling the girls anything. "All right, everybody, and us sitting here staring at the guys, get up and let's go," Nancy ordered. She was the leader of the group. The girls did get up. Naomi didn't want to leave, in case she never saw him again, but staying here alone wasn't an option either. They went out, headed for the House of Culture, where the disco was held. On the way, they talked about some unimportant little things. Naomi was not here. Yes, she was walking next to her friends, but the tall blonde man did not get out of her head. The girls went inside and almost immediately went dancing. And what was Naomi's surprise when the slow dance started? The young man from the cafe came up to her. "Would you like to dance?" he asked her. Yes, she was speechless and everything else because she couldn't believe that this was actually happening. He led her to the center of the room. They started dancing. "My name is Evan," he told her. "I'm Naomi." She wanted to look at him, but she couldn't look up because she was too shy. "I noticed you at the cafe," he told her. "Yeah," she said, and then she was silent. She was ashamed to admit that she had noticed him in the cafe. She danced and thought to herself that it was really fate that they both noticed each other and liked each other at first sight. As soon as the dance was over, the girls came up to Naomi and started asking questions. "Naomi, that's the guy from the cafe," Nancy told her. And you think I didn't notice that? She smiled a little. And what did he tell you? What was his name? They began to pile questions on the girl. Natalie and Casey stood back. They were very curious too. I don't know anything yet. We just danced and met. His name is Evan. He told me that he saw me there too. Naomi told them, and she saw that the guy had come downstairs too, standing there looking at them. Naomi, can I talk to you for a minute? He came up to them. Hi, Nancy said to him. Evan, meet my friends Nancy, Natalie, and Casey, said the girl, and for some reason she blushed again. She didn't realize what was happening to her. It was the first time she had been like this. Naomi began to carry over to herself all the things she had read in women's novels. There she was, so modest, quiet, docile, and he would take her by the hand and lead her through life. That's what she thought as the guy walked her home that evening. Why haven't I seen you anywhere before? Evan asked her as they approached her house. I don't know, she answered. She didn't want to go home. She wanted to spend some more time with him. But she realized that if it was real, if it was true, they would see each other again tomorrow and maybe start talking. Let's meet tomorrow, as if Evan had read her mind. Sure, I'm free after school. Come to the courtyard, she told him. They agreed, said goodbye, and the girl went home. How was the walk? Her mom asked her. Great. Naomi was shining like a new dollar. Tell me what happened. What happened? I haven't seen you so happy for a long time. Mom guessed that her daughter had something good. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think I fell in love. Clasped my hands in a lock, stood looking at Naomi's mom. Her face was smiling from ear to ear. Oh, daughter, be careful, don't get burned, her mom told her. Of course, I don't know yet, but I think Evan is nice. Naomi had always been like that. Whatever happened in her life, she always thought several steps ahead, and now she wanted everything to be as it was in her dreams. The next day they met. At first, when she approached him, he took her hands and for a few minutes they just stood looking at each other, smiling. You have such good energy, Evan told her then. And you have. She didn't know what to say to that, so she said so. You know what, I think we should start dating. Evan was calm, and the fact that they knew each other so little didn't bother him in the slightest. We could try, she replied, and inside she was jubilant. It had to be that day, to go to the cafe where he was. And then he came to the disco. Is that what happens in life? Naomi used to think that only in love novels they wrote like that, in books or something, but it was impossible. From that moment on, the guys started dating. Naomi introduced Evan to her parents right away. After a while, Evan introduced her to his mom. Now every night they met, went for walks, went somewhere, both of them told each other different stories. I'm leaving soon, Naomi told him one day. Where? He didn't understand. To study. She laughed back. He looked so scared. You scared him. He waved his hand at her. I think that this separation will not affect our relationship with you, the girl asked him. You know, I could come with you, he said after a short pause. That would be perfect, she smiled. After receiving her diploma, Naomi immediately applied to the institute where she wanted to go, got accepted, and first checked into the dormitory. Evan promised that when he solved all his questions, he would come to her, and then they would think about a rented apartment. Since the girl had planned to study here for a long time, she liked it, and she wanted to do it. She wasn't lazy, even when Evan came to visit during the week. They would walk around a bit so that she would have time to do whatever assignments were set. Then the young man said that he could finally stay and they could try to start living together. Naomi was both so pleased by this situation and a little saddened. She realized that if she started living an adult life, she would have less time to study, but she couldn't say no because she really liked this man. Wow, that's a lot of work, Evan told her. She had already completed 3 years of school, and she had a practicum ahead of her. Naomi could not decide where she would go, either to her hometown or here, where she had already been offered a place. Of course, in the native walls would be very good, but since Evan had already got a job here, she thought that another separation was not necessary in her life. So she agreed to do her internship here in this city. You decided to stay here after all, the young man told her. Yes, what's the point of going back and forth? Now I'll get an internship, then I'll graduate, and maybe I'll get a job here too, Naomi said. When Naomi came to the school, she could not put it into words how much she liked it here, how much she liked all these children. She had memorized each one during the time that practice was going on. Naomi managed not only to make friends with these children, but also to learn a little about each one, what kind of character each one had and what kind of approach each one needed. When she entered the 4th year, she didn't want to think about anything else, only about going to work. She lived her studies and knew that everything would work out for her. When the girl was already in the 5th year, her mother suddenly came to visit her. She did this very rarely, but here the daughter saw that the woman did not have everything in order. "Mommy, what happened?" She hugged her, and at that moment she did not hold back and cried. It turned out that Naomi's father had left her for another woman. Can you imagine? Her mother looked at her with tearful eyes. "How is this possible? You always had an exemplary family," sat Naomi on a chair and took her hands on her head. "I myself never imagined that I would be alone in my old age," the woman said. She stayed at Evans with Naomi for a few days. In the meantime, the young man decided that while his future mother-in-law was here, he had to propose. He did everything correctly and beautifully. The restaurant, flowers, ring, smiles, and then the main words in Naomi's life. She thought back to her childhood dreams. In them, everything was just as Evan had done now. "Oh, children, how happy I am for you," her mother had said. Once Naomi had read a book that described a girl's wedding. It was written that she wore a light white dress, which was tied around her figure, with a hat on her head. And for some reason, she visualized this image in her head so much that she couldn't think of anything else but that. "Darling, how about an ordinary classic dress?" her mother asked her. "No, I want such a dress." She drew a sketch on paper, but they couldn't find it in the stores. Then, while the girl was at school, which she was coming to the end, she passed the state examination, diploma, everything else. Her mother was looking for a seamstress to do what her daughter wanted so much. "Honey, look what I have here," stood the woman at the closet when her daughter returned from her studies. Almost everything was already turned in. There was only a little left. "Well, show me," Naomi guessed, but she had no idea it would really be so beautiful. "Close your eyes," her mother smiled. Naomi closed her eyes with her hands. She waited. She heard the closet door creak open. She took her hands away. She watched and remained silent. "Mom," she finally exhaled and walked over to her. "Everything for you, my dear." The woman realized that her daughter liked everything. When Evan came home in the evening, the bride-to-be decided not to show him the update and not to tell him, so that it would be a surprise later. They had dinner, agreed that the application would be filed now, and the wedding would be held at the end of the summer. Naomi wanted to get a job by then, and she believed that everything would work out. "As you say," the young man pressed her to himself. Mom decided to stay with the young people. She wanted to help them in everything, and as soon as they signed to leave. So far, everything in the girl's life was as she once dreamed. Study was behind her. Her beloved was near. Only happiness and nothing else. "Hello," she came to school. "Good afternoon," the headmistress looked at her. "I would like to get a job with you." Naomi smiled, because she and this woman had known each other for a long time. When the girl was interning, Beatty herself had told her that she was always welcome here. Of course, Naomi, she extended her hand and took a folder with documents. The girl was sure that she would succeed. There was not a single doubt. She was expected to work in September, and now she could get married. "Nancy, hi," Naomi called her friend. Since they'd been separated, they'd seen each other very rarely. "A friend, finally," she said. "I want to invite you to the wedding," Naomi said, and listened to her friend's reaction. "Are you going to call Natalie and Casey yourself, or should I?" Nancy asked. "No, I'll do it myself," smiled the girl. "Okay, see you later then," said the friend, and they said goodbye. After that, Evan booked the restaurant. Everything was ready. There weren't very many people at the wedding, but it was fun. Evan and Naomi were happy. Mom went home. She hated it so much, but she couldn't stay with the kids all the time, could she? "Beloved, now we have to think about the babies." Evan hugged her, burrowed into her hair, and whispered, "Beloved, wait a little while. I have to do some work," she said. "Yes, of course," he kissed her. The work was not easy. At first, Naomi, when she started working, had been kind, making concessions to everyone. But with the children she worked with, she had to be strict with them because they could be sassy. If you were nice to them, they didn't listen, they behaved badly. Naomi began to develop a strong character, a strong voice, and though she cried a lot in the evenings, she liked working at the school. Why do you go there if you cry afterwards? Evan said irritably. He couldn't see his wife suffering. No, I like everything. It's just emotions I can't let out. She lifted her face and smiled. I see it'll get you through school. Her husband didn't like the way things were going. 3 years passed, Naomi still hadn't talked about having kids, even though Evan really wanted to. Well, wait a little longer, she told him. How many can you do? Look at yourself. With your school became nervous, twitchy, he told her reproachfully. Darling, don't be nervous, she sat up to him. Good. He kissed his wife on the neck. At work, the girl was praised, and after 7 years of her work, the director summoned her to her office. Hello, walked an excited Naomi into her office. Have a seat. The woman showed her to a chair. The young teacher was worried. Naomi, would you like to be a head teacher? The principal asked. What? The girl didn't expect to hear that. Why you work? You have all the indicators on top. Saw Naomi that in the hands of the headmistress again all her documents. Good, it meant a promotion, which meant she was doing a good job. Back home today, she returned in high spirits. She and Evan had had a strained relationship for about 6 months. He could stay late at work, go out with his friends and more. The only complaint he had with his wife was that she was exhausted and worked too hard. Nauman hoped that it was just a crisis in the family life, and that soon everything would pass and it would be like before. Evan, I'm home. She entered the apartment, but the answer was silence, as usual lately. The girl went to the kitchen. She put the kettle on, made a light salad, sat down at the table. After that, she picked up the phone to call her husband. When she opened the list of recent calls, she grinned. Why does it like this? She asked herself. Before, when she first wrote down her future husband's number, she had him listed as her favorite, then changed her phone and listed Ivan with just a name. But now the screen was simply labeled husband. Where had it all gone? Where was this great love of theirs? At that moment, he answered her. Honey, where are you? Naomi asked him. And you? I'm at home. I wanted to cry. And I'm at work, he said, because a couple of years ago, he used to come and wait for her, cook dinner, buy flowers, and his wife was gone. When he called, she said she was at work. It's late. She looked at her watch. And what? A lie had piled up. He lied to her. Come, we need to talk, she asked. But he came back when Naomi was already asleep, did something briefly in the kitchen, then came into the bedroom. He took a pillow and a plate and went to sleep in the hall. Good morning. She passed him when she woke up. Morning. He squinted against the bright Keshi because Naomi had opened the curtains. We need to have a serious talk. Naomi stood over him. Good. When they walked together to the kitchen for breakfast and coffee. As they sat at the table, she stirred the sugar in her mug and looked at her husband. Why don't you tell me where you disappear for so long every day? The wife asked Evan. You know, at work, he told her. Okay, she nodded. And what's the name of your job? What started it? He wanted to leave. No, we'll talk, as if turning on the teacher girl. If you don't believe me, it's none of my business, he told her. Evan, why is everything happening like this? What happened to our family? She looked at him, tears in her eyes. And where is it? Our family, show me. I wanted kids and you didn't. Work, work. So live with your work. He stood up and went to get dressed. I don't understand. A tear rolled down her cheek. I'm gone, she heard from the hallway. Good, sighed the girl. She had to go to work too, so she went to her room, got ready, smiled at herself in the mirror, and left the house. You don't look so good, her colleague and friend said to her at work. Yes, my husband's having a little trouble. Naomi didn't want to talk to her. Okay, when you want to tell her, you'll tell her yourself. She didn't bother her. In the evening, when Naomi was home, it was empty again. She did everything as usual. She had to do a little work today. She sat at the table until the night before, but Evan never showed up. No matter how many times the girl called him, he was unavailable. She went to bed, and in the morning she found that he was still gone. The phone was silent too. So 3 days passed. Naomi went to work, came home, where there was still no one. Listen, maybe you should file a search warrant, her friend advised her. No, you what? And if he is just at friends or women, Then everyone will laugh. Naomi did not want to do it. Fine, do what you want. Her friend didn't insist on anything. Yeah, Naomi just nodded. Listen, we want to go to a cafe this weekend. Will you come with us? Asked her friend. Oh, what are you? What about? After these words, she was silent. She even felt funny. Who live in? The woman realized what she wanted to say. Yeah, Naomi shook her head. Forget about him, he'll be back now. Give him a beating, pack his things, and put him out on the street, she said. Okay, we'll deal with it ourselves. She went to her room, and a few hours later she headed home. She walked into the apartment, saw the lights on, went into the room. Evan was sitting on the couch. Hi, Naomi said hello to him in a stern voice, showing that she was about to have a serious conversation. Well, he looked at her. Where have you been? She didn't sit down. Where I was, I'm not there anymore, grinned Evan. I see, so you won't talk. She walked to the window. Why not? I was with a woman. He stopped talking. What? She turned sharply. Naomi had assumed it, but to have it like this, he himself directly told her about it. She couldn't believe it. What she heard, I've been seeing a woman for months now. Now she seems to be expecting a baby, my baby. He emphasized the last words in his voice. Good, it became so hurtful that it seemed she was about to suffocate. She wanted to cry, but there were no tears, only a spasm squeezed her throat. Naomi went to the bedroom. She dialed the number of Ariana, the same friend and colleague from school. What's wrong? She picked up the phone. Can I come over? Naomi asked quickly. Of course, she never said no to a friend. Naomi came, told her everything, and then the tears did not wait. The way she was crying now, she had never cried before. That's it, friend. You're definitely coming with us this weekend. You need to relax, summed up her friend. Good, Naomi didn't know what she should even do now. After work the next day, she went home again. Even though she was afraid to see Evan there was nothing to do. But he wasn't there as usual. So she opened her closet and looked at what she had to wear to go out with the girls tomorrow night. A cocktail dress was chosen, shoes. She promised Ariana that she would be beautiful and happy that day. Her husband never showed up, and on Saturday, after working all day, the girlfriends got together in the evening. Shall we have a rest? Ariana asked. Of course, she was exaggerating. They went to a cafe, ordered something to eat, and a glass of champagne. Everything decent. When it was late, Naomi went home. Let's stay a little longer. Look how much fun the music is, Ariana told her. No, I'll go. Naomi didn't want to be here anymore. She would have stayed a little longer, but her friend was always distracted by her other two friends, and Naomi wasn't interested. Okay, can you walk alone? Ariana asked. Sure, the girl smiled back at her. She left the cafe, did not walk a few meters, hit the heel in the grate, which was in the ground, and almost fell. Oops, she bent her foot unnaturally. How come? Not carefully. Some man came up to her. Thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't know what Naomi was apologizing for. Come on, I'll walk you out. He took her under his arm. No need, I'll do it. She looked. There was a bench up ahead. It's no trouble at all, the stranger mumbled. They walked a little deeper into the park and sat down on a bench. Thank you, Naomi thought. Her house is just the other way around. It's okay, he smiled. Only now did the girl realize that champagne they'd been drinking the evening before had given her a bit of a headache. Before that, she had thought everything was fine. Would you like some ice cream? The man sitting next to her suddenly asked her. Come on, Naomi thought, why is it that her husband is allowed to find new women, while she can't even meet anyone in the park? Here, take it. He took out a briquette from the bag. Why don't you eat it yourself? She took a bite of the already melting treat. I can't. I went to the dentist this afternoon, he smiled. Do you live in the neighborhood? Naomi asked him. No, I came here specifically to get my teeth fixed, he answered her. Their conversation seemed to be about nothing. In this neighborhood, the girl knew that they had the only clinic in town that was praised. Yes, he turned to her, looked at her and smiled. What? She didn't understand. You got a little dirty. He moved closer to her, wanting to remove the remains of the ice cream that was over her lip. What are you doing? She looked at the stranger. His face was very close. What beautiful eyes you have, he said, and at that moment he started kissing her on the lips. Naomi herself did not know what was wrong with her at that moment. always so decent and correct. Today, she just gave in to a total stranger. He kissed her while unbuttoning her dress. She didn't make a sound. It just felt good. After it was over, the girl quickly got up and walked. What have I done? What a fool. She blamed herself. Nothing. Vanechka, to spite you. Why is it possible for some people and some not? She came home and immediately hid in the bathroom. She wanted to wash it all away. But as the shower water poured over her, she remembered the stranger's touch, and her stomach felt heavy. Naomi shook her head, pushing the thoughts away. After that, she went to sleep. When the girl woke up in the morning, her head was cracking so hard that it felt like it was going to split. Yes, I guess I only felt like I had a couple of drinks, Naomi said to herself, and looked in the mirror. At that moment, she remembered what had happened after she had gone home, her face flooded with color. Good thing it was a stranger and they would never, ever meet again. Today was Sunday, which meant no need to go anywhere. The girl decided to spend the whole day at home. She went to wash her face, looked at herself again, and immediately the memories of yesterday popped up in her mind. What the hell is this? She couldn't understand how she'd even gone for it. She washed her face, ate breakfast. Evan was still gone, but Naomi wasn't thinking about him today. She got comfortable on the couch, turned on the TV. There was nothing interesting there. Then the girl decided to call her friend to ask how they ended last night. At that moment, she remembered about herself again. When she imagined it, it was so embarrassing, and suddenly someone saw. But she pushed it away again and dialed Ariana's number. "Hi, how was the party last night?" she asked her friend. "Oh, and don't ask, my head hurts. I'm still in bed," she answered. "I see. Take a pill, then I'll call you later," Naomi told her and hung up. Then she got up. She decided to do a little cleaning. The apartment was already clean. She just needed to dust. And that she did. She thought she should make dinner. She went to the kitchen. Naomi was waiting for something, but she didn't realize it. When it was far after lunch, she sat down in front of the TV again. It was starting some love series. She loved it. At the same time, the girl opened a news feed on the internet to find out what was going on in their city. This page was very popular and convenient. You always know what events and where they happened. What is this? She saw a picture of their neighborhood, and then there was the news text. It said that yesterday a man came to the dentist's office and was diagnosed with HIV. Everyone who had been to the dentist's office that day should be tested immediately to rule out any cases of the disease. Jesus. Naomi clamped her hand over her mouth. She remembered the stranger's words that he had come specifically to have his teeth treated. Why didn't he treat them in his city? What to do? After that, the girl had a panic attack. She thought that if the school found out something, and they were soon to have a medical examination, it would be a disgrace for the whole town. And what next? How to live with all this? Naomi got through the day, and the next day she went to the principal's office first thing in the morning. "I want to quit," she said from the doorstep. She didn't understand. She looked at the employee confused. "What is not clear? I divorced my husband. I want to leave," said the girl so quickly, as if something afraid. "Naomi, calm down, sit down. Let's talk." Betty began to speak calmly. "I'm fine. I just want to get out of here as soon as possible," she said. "Okay, but maybe you can work for a month?" asked the principal. "There are 2 weeks till the end of the year. I'll finish them. I won't work anymore," the girl said firmly. "Okay." The one gave her a sheet and a pen for Naomi to write a statement. It was necessary to finish all the things. Naomi was afraid to meet Ariana. She didn't want to tell anyone anything, because even the closest ones could spread gossip. Now she would come straight to the first class, and as soon as the bell rang from the last class, she would leave immediately. "Girlfriend, what's wrong with you? Where are you? Betty said you were leaving?" Ariana called her. "Yeah, sorry, I don't have time." She was just dropping the call. It was a few days before the end of the furlough period, and Evan still hadn't come home once. No matter how many times Naomi called him, he either didn't answer or just dropped the call. Then his wife decided to leave him a letter in which she wrote that she was not angry with him and wished him happiness, and also that he himself filed for divorce. She does not mind, and let them with a new girl, everything will be fine. The girl put the paper on the table. After that, she went to bed. The next day, she was leaving. "Mom, hi," she came home. "Naomi?" She was surprised. Her daughter never came without calling. Why are you so surprised? I can't come home already? She smiled naively. No, it's okay. Come in, took her back the woman. Before this, the daughter had not told her mother what was going on in their family. But now, when they were sitting in the kitchen, she decided to tell her everything. Mommy, I have to leave, she told her as they sat at the table drinking tea. I don't understand what happened. Everything was fine with you. The woman was surprised. Evan found someone else. They are expecting a child, and I can't cope with this situation. I decided to go away. Tears rolled from my eyes. Yes, there might have been some truth to it, but that wasn't why Naomi was crying. She would never stay here, and if the truth became known, she would be ashamed of herself in front of her mother. Oh my God, my little girl. Her mom hugged her and cried too. Listen, you remember Aunt Cindy, who lives somewhere in the South? She asked her daughter. Well, she nodded. Maybe I'll go to her place. We used to go there a lot, Naomi suggested. I don't even know. We haven't talked in so many years, the woman said. All right, I need the sea air and distance from society now, she lied. Well, maybe I should come with you, the mother asked. No, you'll be fine. I'll stay with you for a couple of days and then I'll be on my way, Naomi said in a businesslike manner. Everything was so fast and amazing, not only for the mother but also for the girl herself. Now all the evenings while she was here, they would get together with her mother, and as they had done long ago, they would watch different movies and then discuss them. The mother, in this way, wanted to distract her daughter from bad thoughts. Don't be bored, I'll be there soon, Naomi hugged her, thinking that it might not be true. Good, and you there as you get settled, be sure to call, cried and kissed her woman. Naomi went to the station, got on the train, drove, looked out the window, and thought that this was not the life she had dreamed of. Some women sat next to her and they chatted and laughed. And here she was. The last time she had been here was when she was still in school. For some reason, the village had seemed big to her then. And now, when the cab had brought her there, she could see that there were not so many inhabitants. Anybody home? She knocked on the window. The house sloped and seemed smaller than it had seemed to her before. Come in just for fun, a woman passed by. Okay, Naomi was surprised. She went through the gate, then into the house. It didn't smell very good. Aunt Cindy, shouted the girl. Who is it? She heard from the room. It's me, Naomi. Remember, me and Grandma used to come to visit you all the time, she told her. Oh, Naomi, come in. The girl entered the room. The woman was lying in bed. It was obvious that she was sick. Everything around her was dirty and dark. What's wrong with you? Naomi was amazed that she hadn't reported anything to anyone. It's just something that happened. I came home from the hospital and I'm lying here. Neighbors go help, but still, everything is not the same, Caroline complained. Why didn't you tell anyone? Naomi was still standing in the middle of the room. Why burden anyone with your problems? She wanted to smile, but she did it very badly. I see. I think that you will not refuse me hospitality, and in return, I will do everything here and help you, Naomi said. Great, stay. I won't be bored, said Caroline. From that moment, Naomi started cleaning the house. She went to the store and bought some groceries to cook something in the evening. As she walked down the street, she realized that there were only a few houses left in the village, just like the inhabitants. Hello, why did everyone leave? Naomi asked a woman passing by. I don't know. They're all going to the city, she shrugged. I see. Naomi nodded her head. It was even better for her. Less people, less gossip. Who are you? Who are you here to see? The local woman asked back. To Caroline, she is sick. She needs care. Naomi caught herself thinking that she had started to lie a lot lately. Oh, that's good. And we're all worried about her. The woman smiled. Everything will be fine. They walked down the street together. And why are you? Do not live there, at home, nodded her head interlocutress. I broke up with my husband, he left, so I decided to hide somewhere to not see anyone. The girl lied again. Oh, it's nice here, smiled the woman. By the way, my name is Naomi. She waited for her to introduce herself. And I'm Anna, she said in a friendly manner. Nice to meet you, Naomi smiled back. She went to the store, bought, of course, not everything she needed, but something. I'm back, she informed Caroline when she got to the house. She heard nothing in reply. She was frightened, but when she entered the room, she realized that her mistress was just sleeping. The girl covered her with a blanket and herself went to the kitchen. Naomi liked it here very much. She remembered from her childhood how she used to go swimming with the local kids. Now she wanted to dive into the cool water. She was alone here. No one was bothering her at all. And that was a good thing. Recently, Naomi thought about herself, her life, her health. It was sad that everything turned out this way, but there was nothing left. She didn't take any tests on purpose because she didn't even want to know that there was something wrong with her. Today and the next few days, she spent a lot of time on the beach. "Caroline, how are you?" She came to the house, which was now bright with sunlight. She was fine, she said, but she sounded like she was moaning. Great. Naomi saw her cheer up, but she realized she wasn't really. The woman was constantly on painkillers. The girl herself did not think about anything. She considered the diagnosis, which she had recently learned about, very terrible and fatal. So she thought that as long as she was given, she would spend her time here. Maybe someday she would invite her mom to visit, but that was something to think about later. For now, she needed to get the house in proper shape. She had already done it inside, but now she had to do something outside because everything looked not very nice there either. Baba Anna, Naomi had come to the woman's house and was now calling out to her. "Yes, Naomi," she went outside. "Isn't there a couple of sturdy men who could help me?" asked the girl. "Oh, I'm not here, but you can call and they'll come," she said. But Naomi didn't want to invite anyone to the village. She decided that she would do everything in time. Now she was in no hurry. "Thank you," she went back. "Wait. Come in for a cup of tea," the woman offered her. "Thank you," the girl went to her. She didn't want to talk to anyone at first, but knowing how people lived in the village, she didn't want them to say anything about her. "Caroline, now I'll heat up dinner and we'll eat." Naomi thought that here she began to feel something different than before. She wanted so badly to call her friend, to tell her that she was doing well, but she didn't. She had thoughtfully changed her phone number when she left, and now no one knew where she was or how to call her. She'd also warned her mom not to give her contacts to anyone. "Oh, I feel so bad today," the woman said. Now Naomi went to the room to give the mistress a shot. "Naomi, sit down." She was breathing heavily. "What?" The woman came closer to her and sat down beside the bed. "Listen, I have no one. All my life I thought, here now, I'll earn money, and then a husband and children. But you see, as it turned out, if I'm gone, you can live in this house, I'm there." She pointed her hand to the table and stopped talking, closed her eyes. It was obvious that it was difficult for her to talk. Naomi took Naomi's injection and gave it to the woman. You could hear her feeling better. "Thank you." Cindy looked at the girl. "It's going to be okay," Naomi repeated like a mantra. "Thank you. You got here just in time," the woman said. A month passed, the second, as Naomi lived here. She liked everything, only she missed her mother very much. The girl went every day to the neighbors, which were not so many. She tried to pay attention to each of them. On some days she made pies and invited everyone to her yard. Carolina was getting worse every day. "Maybe you should go to the hospital," Naomi suggested it. "No, they wouldn't help," she coughed. "I don't know how to help you," Naomi cried every day. "You don't have to help me, just let it go." The woman stood her ground. "I just can't do that." Lately the mood was changing by the hour. "It's okay." Caroline held Naomi's hand. She was gone after 4 months of Naomi living here. "Baba Anna." Naomi came running to her in the night. "What's wrong?" She ran out of the house in a scarf. "Caroline." Naomi couldn't speak quietly. "My God." The neighbor woman understood at once. "Come on, I'm scared." She did not know what to say and how to behave at this moment. "Now run to the others." She waved her hand at her. "Okay." Naomi went to the next neighbors. As she ran, she wiped her feet so badly she couldn't get up afterward. The women did everything right. They called the paramedics. The paramedics documented everything. They didn't take the woman anywhere because it was written in her medical history that she was sick. "Everything is ready. We can bury her," Anna said sadly. "Good," agreed everyone else, and only Naomi could not come to her senses. But she gathered her thoughts, and everyone went to the cemetery. It was business as usual there. After all sat down at the table, memorialized, said a few words, and began to disperse. "And you, girl, why don't you take care of yourself?" asked Naomi Anna, who stayed here. "Don't you understand?" The girl looked at her with big eyes. "You'd have a baby under your heart," smiled Grandma Anna. "What? It can't be." Now Naomi realized why she felt so bad and her mood was changing. "It can, and indeed it can," smiled the woman. "And what to do now?" was as the frightened girl. "You what?" Baba Anna laughed. "No, sorry." Naomi realized that now she could give herself away. "You see, her husband left and left you a present," the woman said. "Yes, a present." Naomi shook her head. Now she wanted to be alone to think. "Don't be sad. We'll help you with everything," Anna said. "Forgive me, I'm tired. I need to rest and think about everything," Naomi said to her neighbor. "That's it, I understand. I'm leaving." She got up and went to the exit. And Naomi was left alone. She sat by the window and began to think about what to do and how to be further. If there really was a disease, it could be transmitted to the child. If you go to register, you have to take tests. Everything will be clear at once. "No, I will not do anything. Let everything go as it goes," she said to herself. The next day, the girl went to the city, went to the store, bought tests, and then everything that may be useful in childbirth. She realized that there would be a lot of blood, so she took gloves for her hands so as not to endanger anyone. And as for the baby, she had wanted one for a long time, and there was no way she was going to give it up now and not hurt it. Naomi had made up her mind finally. Since Grandma Anna knew about her situation, she had already told everyone the good news. When Naomi arrived from town, they were waiting for her. One brought milk, the other curd. "Here, now you need it, all your own, homemade, useful." They gave the girl all this in her hands. "Thank you." The girl was grateful. "Eat to your health," they smiled, sincerely happy for the girl. "Thank you very much," Naomi smiled, but she wanted to cry. She went back into the house. The girl realized that now, if she had a child, he would need a lot of things. She used to have some savings of her own, and Caroline gave her pension. It was enough for everything. Now they had to figure out something to earn money. There were no organizations here, except for the store, but there was a salesman. Yes, and now, when her belly starts to grow, Naomi won't be able to stand behind the counter for hours at a time. "So let's remember the youth," Naomi said to herself, and went to the room. She saw there Carolina had a lot of yarn and different material. The girl took out yarn and needles, sat down in an armchair, and began to knit. Not an hour passed, and she already had a small toy in her hands. Great. She evaluated her own work. After that, she went and sat down at the computer to sell. It is necessary to tell people that she is doing it. Naomi created a small website, advertised that she knits toys and sews to order. After that, she started making products. When Grandma Anna came to visit her and saw all this, first began to grumble that when pregnant knit is not allowed, the baby can be harmed. But Naomi did not believe in such omens. She continued, "You know what, and take my old machine, even though it is many years old, but it can still do a lot of things," said the woman. "You have no idea how you will help me." Naomi has already thought about this topic, wanted to rent somewhere. "Nothing, sew me a robe," laughed the neighbor. From that moment, the girl began to sew. She was good at it. One of the women from the village went to the market in town every day. She sold milk, cheese, and cottage cheese there. "Hello, Maria." Naomi came to her one day. Her belly was already visible. "Hi, Naomi," she greeted her. "Look what I brought you." The girl took out of the bag new curtains for the windows, a robe and pajamas for the woman's husband. "Oh, what are you doing? Why so much?" the woman asked her. "I want to ask you for a favor, and I can only pay with this," Naomi said modestly. "Ask for whatever you want." The local woman wondered, "Could you take my toys to the market? Maybe someone will buy them?" She gave the bag for the woman to look at. "Sure," smiled Maria. "Thank you. There on the tags is written my email address. Maybe someone will start to order," showed the girl to the woman. "I see your point," nodded the woman. She left the next day in the morning, and in the evening she brought Naomi the proceeds. She sold them all. "You wouldn't believe how popular they are," Maria said admiringly. "I'm so happy. Will you take more?" Naomi asked. Even though the earnings were not so big, but still, it was enough for something. After that, a good sale started. Since Naomi was alone, she didn't have time to make much. It was frustrating, but the girl tried. One evening, Anna came to Naomi's house. She entered the house and looked at the products that the girl makes for a long time. Everything is so beautiful. People like it for a reason, she said. Yes, thank you, was grateful to all these residents, Naomi. Listen, my dear, the woman sat down at the table. You're due soon, and you're not even going to the hospital. You see, I have a fear of big cities lately. I don't know, maybe it was the divorce. I had to lie to the girl again. And where are you going to give birth? Grandma made big eyes. Here, she showed me the place she had prepared for the birth. What? Are you crazy? Grandma Anna was surprised. What's wrong? Everyone used to give birth like this. Naomi almost cried. She was waiting and afraid of this conversation. Okay, and then what? The woman didn't understand. Nothing, we'll give birth, then we'll register the child, and that's it. Naomi shrugged her shoulders because she didn't know what would happen afterwards. Okay, girl, you are risky. You need to tell Aurora what you have made up. She stood up and headed for the exit. Thank you. The girl threw her arms around the woman. Sometimes Naomi, when she wasn't working, started to think about how and what would happen. She hadn't told her mom how surprised she would be when she found out about her grandson. And that was the worst part. Sooner or later, if she was sick, someone would find out. Everything will be fine, Naomi said with each stitch as she knitted or sewed. It calmed her down a bit. When the girl was already in her last month, she received a letter in the mail. It was from some private store. They wanted to order from the girl a small batch of toys to try out. That day, Naomi had a feast. She made pies again, cut up salads, and invited the closest people, which was practically everyone. I didn't think it would work out, shook her head at Maria, who was still driving and selling what the girl gave her. To be honest, I didn't really believe it myself, Naomi said quietly. Okay, it's okay. Grandma Anna stroked her arm. A week later, Naomi went into labor. She made her way to her neighbor's house and told her everything. At first she groaned, then screamed and ran to Aurora, who knew how to deliver babies. It's like a primitive system. You could have called the hospital, Aurora said. It's too late to call somewhere else, grumbled Anna. Water, the woman commanded. Here, Naomi handed her a bag containing bandages, gauze, gloves, masks, and more. What's all this for? Aurora didn't understand. Just in case, for sterility, Naomi said between contractions. Okay, Aurora and Anna put everything on. They looked ridiculous now. Oddly enough, everything went very well. The whole thing lasted about 3 hours. And here's a mother holding her newborn son. Should we call an ambulance? Aurora asked the girl. If necessary, I'll do it myself, she thanked her. Aurora left, and Anna stayed in the house for a long time. She cleaned everything, washed the floors. Now it seemed as if nothing had ever happened here. What will you name your son? The woman asked. John said, a happy Naomi, she smiled. I'm so happy for you. Congratulations. She walked over and looked at the young girl and the little baby in her arms. If it wasn't for you, cried the girl. She thought to herself, if it weren't for her, then she wouldn't have been so careless in the park. There wouldn't have been all this. But on the other hand, she wouldn't have a son now either. She was so tired that, while John sniffled beside her, she dozed off too. She woke up to her son stirring. Naomi was so curious about all this, she tried to feed the baby, but there was no milk yet. The next day, the whole village came to congratulate the young girl. It was necessary to go to register the baby, but Naomi could not do it yet. Everything hurt. Do you want me to do it? Grandma Anna asked. No, now, a little step back, and I'll do everything myself. And who will let you do it? Naomi said quietly. As you know, shrugged the neighbor. For now, the girl was happy every day when she was near Stipa. She couldn't believe that such a thing had happened in her life. But it was true, so it had to be accepted. Alone, Naomi was good, but now, with a small child, knitting and sewing was possible only in those moments when John was asleep. The girl was very tired. She just fell off her feet. But there were orders, and not small. The girl had a choice. To refuse all customers and lose them forever, or a little patience and have an established base. Now the girl had to make another separate tab, which demonstrated what Naomi was sewing, because where the toys were, it was no longer relevant. What are you doing, girl? You must be exhausted already. Grandma Anna came to her once again. No, I'm fine, Naomi answered her. Why haven't you registered the baby yet? The woman asked. We'll do it, Naomi said tiredly. Look at you. Who do you look like? And let me take John for a walk, and you get some sleep, the woman said sternly. Naomi looked at her and fell asleep as she walked. That's it, no more talking, go to bed, the woman commanded. Thank you. That's all the girl said. While Baba Anna went outside, the young mistress was already asleep. She was so tired lately that she just couldn't stay on her feet anymore. Sam came home. He lived with his mom. He was fine, but he couldn't forget one thing that happened to him recently in the park of the neighboring town. Son, why are you sitting there? At least go out, the woman said to him. I don't want to, he told her. The young man worked for himself. He practically never left the house because he didn't need to. How so? I don't want to. All young guys go out, meet girls, and you are always alone, like a beggar. The woman was indignant. I like one girl, he confessed to his mother. And why don't you go out with her? Don't invite her to visit. The woman was surprised. Because I don't know her, he answered truthfully. What do you mean? The woman didn't understand. Just like that, I don't know, that's all. The young man began to feel sad. At that moment in the park, he didn't know what had gotten into him. He just wanted to kiss her, but it had gone too far. And now those eyes, the smell, the hair, everything came back to him, and he couldn't get rid of it. When a few weeks had passed since that moment, the young man decided to go to the place where he had been not so long ago and meet his mysterious stranger. He remembered that she had told him about the neighborhood where she lived. He would walk there. Then he would go to the park, sit on the same bench, waiting for her to remember and come. But it didn't happen, and the guy was bored and suffering. Why are you like this? How long has it been? His friend asked him. You see, there is a girl I want to find, but I cannot, he said to his friend. And what's the problem? The internet will help you, he replied and smiled. You see, I don't even know her name, he still said sadly. What do you know? Nothing, the city where she lives. And that's all. Sam waved his hands. Understandably, the friend asked everything he knew, wrote down, promised to think of something. But the latter couldn't do anything about it either. Naomi's social media accounts didn't list her as living in the town where they'd met Sam. And there was no other way to find her. So friend, don't be sad. Let's go to a club or a cafe together, meet someone, get acquainted. Alex asked him. No, I don't want to. The guy shook his head negatively. And suddenly, you will meet her, and she is not the one you dream about. You said yourself that you saw her only a few minutes, said the comrade. You don't understand. I feel like we have a connection, Sam told him. Okay, you said you know what neighborhood she lives in. Maybe we'll go there and just walk through all the houses, Alex suggested. Do you have any idea how many there are? The young man was surprised. Well, what do you suggest then? Imagine how many women from this city, and suddenly she was there, not a local, just like you. Could not change his friend's mind. Alex, I don't want to talk about it. Sam didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to talk about it at all. I see, you don't want to talk about it. Just say so, Alex told him. They talked a little more, and then Sam withdrew into himself again. He sat down at his computer every night, opened the girls from the city where they met, and just looked at them. Maybe he'd fall for her, but unfortunately that didn't happen, and Sam suffered again. Why is she so firmly planted in my head? He asked himself. Son, come out. His mother came home from work. He sometimes thought she was calling him to help him with something. But no, in the corridor stood another someone's daughter. Hello, the young man said to the girl, but he looked at his mother with judgment. Why are you standing there? Invite Casey into the room, the woman said. Come in. The young man couldn't tell his mother in front of the girl that she was meddling in his life. Hi, she walked by, clearly shy. Mom, why do you bring them here? The guy told her. Look, what nice girls. Why did not you want to communicate with them? Asked him a woman. Mom. Sam looked at her indignantly, took the kettle, cups and tea, and went to the room where Casey was waiting for him. All right, you sit here and I'll go for a walk, the woman said. All right, nodded Casey's head. As soon as his mother left the apartment, Sam immediately relaxed. He'd start talking and making things up so that Casey would see it all and go off on her own. You think I like it? She got the hint. Then why did you come? The young man didn't understand her. I couldn't say no to my mom. Neither could you. Casey rolled her eyes. At that moment, Sam realized she wasn't the good girl her mother had told him she was. "Do you want a beer?" the young man asked her. "Yeah," she nodded her head. Sam realized that at least he could talk to someone normally instead of sitting with hot tea in his hands and pretending to like everything. "You want to go out tonight?" Casey asked. "Nah, I don't want to." He turned on the TV, threw his feet up on the couch, printed out a beer. "Why, what's sitting here in this apartment, and even next to his mom?" She didn't understand. It was all temporary, he was sure of it. Once a couple of years ago, he'd set out to buy his own apartment, and he'd done it. But then his sister and her husband got into a mortgage. That's when his mother suggested renting out his apartment so she could use the money to help pay the monthly payments. Sam loved and respected his sister, so he agreed to help her. But he had a condition. As soon as he finds a girl, he moves back to this place. That's what he shared with the girl. Wow, I couldn't do that. Casey remembered her life with her parents and younger brother in the same apartment. But I could. For some reason at that very moment, the guy remembered his stranger and he felt sad again. "All right, I should probably go." Casey got up off the couch. "Okay, what do we say you don't like me?" The young man smiled. "I don't care," she shrugged. "Okay, you're normal. Don't listen to your mother," Sam advised her. "Okay, you are too, by the way." She smiled at him and walked out the doorway. After that, Sam started thinking about her again. The one he had met so suddenly and then lost as well. At that moment, his phone rang. He got distracted, answered it. It was Alex's best friend. "Are you still souring at home?" he asked him. "Yeah, my mom just brought my girlfriend over." Sam told his friend how his mom was matchmaking him. "I wish I could do that," the friend envied. "Want me to introduce you?" the guy asked in a friendly way. "Sure, can you?" Alex wasn't sure about it. "Wait." The young man went to the balcony. Casey just came out of the entrance. He shouted to her, asked her to wait a bit. She got curious. She stopped. "That's it, friend. I'll call you back. Meet me today at 7 as usual at our place," Sam said, and hung up. He changed his clothes, went out, closed the doors, and went downstairs. "Did I forget something?" She looked at him. "No, I just thought we could go out tonight." He walked beside her. "Well, why the sudden change?" She was walking beside him. "Honestly?" He turned to her. "Yeah," she was smiling. "I have a friend, Alex. He's been looking for a normal girl for a long time. I suggested he meet you." He laughed. "What are you doing?" She didn't understand. "Thought now that I'm acting like a mother by pandering." The guy explained to her. "Well, yeah," Casey agreed with him. "So are you in?" Sam asked cheerfully. "We can. Why not? If you're so fun, you're probably a friend too," she concluded. Yeah, Alex would be even more fun. They were already on their way to the cafe where their friend was supposed to join them. They arrived, sat down at the table. Sam looked at the clock. It was still half an hour before Alex was supposed to show up. The young man made an order for now. He was sure that Casey must like the comrade. When the maid arrived, he was cheerful and he liked Casey right away, especially since her best friend had recommended her. "Hi, I'm Alex." He took a seat next to her. "Casey," she looked over and realized that her new acquaintance hadn't fooled her. "Well, you guys hang out and I should probably get going." Sam started to get ready. No, where are you going?" For some reason, they started stopping him together. "Sit, socialize. Why do you need me?" Young man did not understand. "Come on, really go." His friend waved his hand at him. He wanted to socialize with Casey, and he knew that if Sam stayed here, he would be sad all evening again. Sam went home. It was possible to please his mom that Casey was attached after all. Of course, that wasn't the right word for the girl, but he couldn't think of any other. "I'm home." He walked into the apartment. "Where's Spatashka?" His mom came out. "She stayed at the cafe with Alex," said the guy cheerfully. What about Alex? What about you?" The mother got excited. "Look, she's nice, and Alex has needed one for a long time. So I introduced them." Sam went into the room and closed the doors behind him. "Good," went the woman to the kitchen. She wanted to cry. She thought that her son was not all right with the psyche. The last few months, he just sits all day at home. She tried various ways to get him to wake up, but there was nothing she could do. "Friend, hello." The next day, Sam heard his friend's voice on the phone. "Hey, how's it going? I was wondering." "Everything is great. Casey is really very cool and good girl. We agreed to meet today, Alex said. Well, I told you so. I was happy for my friend Sam. Now Alex started dating Casey. Sometimes best friends were together. And Sam could really see that the girl was treating the young man perfectly. Birthdays, other holidays now this trio attended together, but Sam couldn't always go with the couple. Today you can't refuse to go to the restaurant with us, Alex said almost a year after he met Casey. Did you make up your mind? His friend asked him. Yes, look, he took the ring out of his pocket and showed it to his friend. Wow, and he remembered his mysterious stranger again. Stop being sad. How long can it be? So much time has passed. Are you going to suffer for the rest of your life? Said the friend seriously. Leave me alone. If it passes, you will be the first to know about it. Suddenly, I will come now to your wedding, and there's the first beauty or a great girl, said Sam. Okay, I'll wait for you at 6 o'clock at the restaurant. Just try to be late, Alex threatened with his fist. Of course I'll be there. I couldn't miss such a moment, the one who brought them together and introduced them. He came home. His mother was cooking something in the kitchen. Mammy, I have great news for you. Alex is proposing to Casey today. The young man kissed her. Come on, we should call her mother. She wiped her hands. No, you don't need to call anyone. It's a surprise, said the son, and stopped her. Well, when will you decide to do it? It's been so long and you're still a recluse. She shook her head. Oh, Mom, it's not about me now. The young man wrinkled his nose. In the evening, he was at the restaurant at the appointed time. Alex was already waiting for him. Well, are you ready? Sam asked him. I don't know. I'm very nervous, admitted the comrade. It is understandable. I hope that when I have such a situation, you will support me too. Sam looked at him. What are you talking about? Naturally, they hugged. At that moment, Casey and her parents walked into the restaurant. They approached the table. Everyone thought that today would be just an acquaintance. But when everyone was seated, Alex, in order not to drag, got down on one knee, gave his beloved a ring, and asked if she agreed to marry him. Of course, she really hadn't expected that. Sam looked at the couple. He didn't realize it could end up like this when he suggested his friend to meet Casey. That's it. Now we have to get ready for the wedding, the young man said. Keep in mind, you'll be a witness. Alex looked at him. They've been gone for a long time. The guy was surprised. Will we have them, Casey? He looked at the girl. Yes, she confirmed. And who will Casey have? Sam raised an eyebrow. The witness? She clarified. Well, not at the guy. You'll see, was all the girl replied. Okay, said the friend then. Nothing interesting happened next, so Sam sat for a while longer and started to get ready to go home. He came in. His mom was still awake. So how'd it go? She asked. Great, Mom. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Tomorrow I'll tell her everything, he told her that evening. Okay, did not insist, Mother. The night passed as usual. Nothing happened. In the morning, when Sam woke up, he first sat down at the computer, did all his chores, and then went out to wash his face and have breakfast. Son, you need a suit right now, the woman said. Why, no one is wearing suits now. He didn't understand. You what? The groom will be in a suit, the bride in a beautiful dress, and you in a t-shirt and jeans. Was she in bewilderment? And why not? We don't know yet what Alex will be wearing, he mumbled, not understanding why he necessarily needs to be in this constrained garment. No, a suit is absolutely necessary. His mother shook her head. Okay, I'll go look online now, he said and stood up. Wait, she stopped him. Well, what else? He didn't want to talk about the suit anymore. Now I'll show you something, or rather someone. I have a friend who works in a small store. She found a unique supplier. The young girl sews unique things that no one else has, Mom said, and at that moment turned on her computer. Oh, Mom, come on. I'd rather do it myself, sighed Sam. He was already tired of her hyper-parenting. No, you just look, and maybe you'll like it. At that moment, the computer turned on. The woman entered the site, and Sam couldn't believe his eyes. His so mysterious stranger from the park was looking at him from the monitor. Wait, he walked over and sat down in a chair. There, what did I say? Wait, I'll show you what she's doing. The woman leaned over and wanted to do something. Please, the young man looked at her. Okay, you wanted to do it yourself. Look, she didn't mind. The main thing was that he was interested. It was some kind of miracle. He couldn't believe it was her. Why did it happen? When he'd been looking for her for so long, his mother just knew about her. Sam still couldn't believe it. He was looking for some kind of trick, wondering if it wasn't her, but just a girl who looked like her. But no, it was the girl who had once twisted her leg, and they had gone to the park with her. The young man copied the address of her page, threw it to himself, and immediately went to his room. "Hello," he wrote to her in private messages. After he sent it all, after every second he checked whether she had read it or not. "Good afternoon." The reply didn't come until an hour and a half later. In that time, Sam was all exhausted. He wondered if it was a fake site. "I would like to order a costume from you. I will be a witness at the best friend," he wrote her. Before that, the young man thought about whether to tell her or not, and then decided that she would take him for a madman, did not. "Sure, now I'll drop you where you need to take the measurements and the fabric you can choose," wrote him a seamstress. "Great, I'm waiting." His hands were shaking. He was so anxious he was even sweating. When the message came back from her, Sam went to his mother. "Mom, urgently need a centimeter tape to take measurements." He spoke quickly. Wow, a minute ago he didn't want anything and now he already needs to take measurements. She was surprised. "Can you make things quicker?" he asked her. "Sure." Now, the woman opened the dresser and started looking. She pulled out everything she needed, wrote down on paper what she was measuring, and then started twisting her son this way and that. When everything was ready, he grabbed the paper and went to the computer to rewrite everything. The mother was surprised at this quickness. "I'm all done, I'm sending it." He wrote and sent all the numbers and the kind of fabric he liked. It wasn't really like that. Sam had picked the first one he saw. He just wanted her to answer him quickly. "Okay, I'll take a look and text you if it's not clear," was all she said. "Okay, I'm waiting." He pressed the send button. There was so much excitement inside that he couldn't even breathe. The next moment, the guy grabbed his phone. He wanted to call his friend to share his joy with him. "Alex, hi." He spoke quickly and loudly. "Sam, I can't talk yet," quickly muttered the friend. "Too bad," sighed the man and hung up the phone. He couldn't sit or stand or do anything else. He wanted to sit at the computer, to write to her. Sam knew now that the girl's name was Naomi, and that was fine. Today, he'd been in a rut all day. His mother had said something. Someone had called, but he hadn't picked up the phone. The guy just imagined how he would come to her, because the city where she lived was only a few kilometers away. "Hello." He heard one thin peak in the morning and immediately jumped up. He knew she was writing. "Good morning." It didn't take a second for him to reply. "I looked it up and made the cutouts." Now he texted him. "That's great. Maybe I can come over for a fitting," he asked the girl. "Usually, if all the measurements are correct, there is no need for a fitting," she replied. "But I still want to come," Sam insisted. "No, that's not an option. I live very far away from you," she refused. "I don't get it. I thought it was in a neighboring town," she stated. "No, that's outdated information. I'm in the South now," she clarified. "I don't care. I'll come get the suit myself." Sam was not only persistent, but as brash as it might seem. "Goodbye." She sent the message and exited the chat room. Sam got up from his desk, grabbed his phone, and drove to his friend's house. He didn't realize what he should do now. He knew the girl's name and the approximate region where she lived. That's what he told Alex. "You know what you're talking about. If before we didn't know the name, but only the neighborhood and at least the city. Now we know the name and the whole South. Do you realize what you're talking about?" "Alex, there she is. I found her. She's practically already met me," Sam said. "Well, I don't know. Offer her double the price and tell her you'll be there in the near future," shrugged and suggested a friend. "Great idea." He said goodbye to his friend and went home. When he got there, he sat down again at the computer. He saw that the girl was not online, but he wrote to her anyway. "Naomi, hello. I need this suit very urgently. My friend is getting married. The wedding is in a couple of days. We just can't wait for it to arrive in the mail. If you want, I can offer double the price," he wrote to her. He sat at the monitor, waiting for her to at least read his messages. But an hour, 2, 3 passed, and the message still hung there unread. He went and laid down on the couch. If she wrote him the address now, he would get off his seat and go to her. It didn't matter what transportation it was, plane, train, car. He would do anything to meet her. "Sam, Let's go to dinner, his mother called him. Okay, he got up and realized that he hadn't eaten anything since morning. The young man went to the kitchen. Even though he was hungry, he didn't eat like he always did. What's wrong? Mom asked. I'll tell you later, if everything works out, answered her son with some riddles. Something with work? She began to guess. No, Mom, you can't guess. Sam wanted to eat and go back to this room. Okay, you don't have to say it. The woman pretended to be offended. Mom, it's okay. Her son came up to her and hugged her. He realized he couldn't tell her anything yet. When Sam got to this room, he saw that not only had the message been read, but there was a reply. He quickly sat down at the table. Well, if you need it so urgently, you can come over, Naomi wrote. And these were the cherished words that the guy had been waiting for. Write your address, he wrote it. And now the seconds stretched like hours as he waited for her to reply. And lo and behold, at the top of the screen he saw running dots. That meant the girl was writing. Sam crossed his fingers. And the next moment the address popped up on the screen with the neighborhood, city, street, and house. How happy the young man was now. Alex, I found her. Without greeting or any introductions, Sam told his friend. Great. You remember that the wedding is in a month. Will you have time? Reminded his friend. Of course, and I won't be there alone. The young man was sure. Wow, you're so confident, his friend marveled. It's okay. Sam didn't want to talk anymore. Okay, friend, I wish you good luck. Fly to your favorite stranger, and then I'll wait for you at my party. Alex wanted to say goodbye. Her name is Naomi, Sam said. Great, answered the friend. After that, the young man ordered plane tickets. He was ready even to refuse her, just to see her again. Are you going somewhere? Sam's mother asked him. Of course I have to pick up my suit, he didn't tell her. It was only a day away, but the day didn't want to end. There was nothing Sam could do. In the morning, he wanted to do things to make the time pass faster, but that wasn't the case. The minutes dragged on, they added up to hours, but even after that it was very long. Mom, I'm off. He picked up his bag when it was 6 hours before the flight. Good luck. I don't know why you're so worried, but I wish you a good flight, she hugged her son. You have no idea what awaits you if everything works out well. He was confusing her again. Okay, she pressed her lips together, realizing her son was up to something. Sam was on his way to his favorite stranger. He called her that in his head, even though he knew her name and where she lived. He got on the plane, and in a couple of hours he was going to land in the place where his happiness and love might live. And again time, which in no way wanted to move. And then the young man fell asleep, and he dreamed of her, so tender and beautiful. At the airport, he took a cab. It did not matter how much it cost. He was going to meet his destiny. Naomi was in the yard at that moment. She was doing something. John was sleeping in a stroller. Grandma Anna came in to see her. Well, how are you? She asked the girl. Everything is fine, she shrugged her shoulders. Any orders? The woman knew all about it. Yes, one should come today for a suit, Naomi said. How to come? You usually by mail? Anna was surprised. Yes, but this one insisted, promised double the price. She looked up at the woman. Wow, so you liked it a lot, concluded the grandmother. Probably didn't know Naomi. She was so tired during all this time that already, and could not speak on any subject. If it had been up to her, she would have given up a long time ago. But she had a child growing up, so there was nothing she could do. Naomi sighed heavily and continued to sit and watch her son sleep. Naomi heard a car pull up to the gate. She realized that other than a guest who needed a suit urgently, no one could have arrived. Naomi went into the house to retrieve what she had made. She took the roll, and as she was walking out, she heard a car pull away. I don't get it, she said, and walked faster to the gate to see what was going on. Sam, on the other hand, let go of the cab driver at that moment, got out of the car, and with quick steps also walked to the gate. He stood in front of it and waited to be opened. Naomi opened it. At first she didn't notice him, and when she saw him, she immediately began to resent him. Young man, what kind of joke is this? Why did you let the car go? Here it is later. She stopped talking and stared at him. Naomi, hi, Sam smiled. This can't be happening. She dropped the suit roll out of her hands. Why can't it be? I've been looking everywhere for you. He took her by the arms and no one cared about the suit bag. Who are you? she cried, at which point the young man pulled her close to him. My name is Sam. I purposely did not tell you anything when we corresponded with you. I wanted to come, he explained to the girl. Let's go inside, she said, as if something was about to happen. Okay, he followed her. You were looking for me on purpose. I'm not going anywhere, and I won't take any tests, she told him. What do you mean? The young man didn't understand. About your illness, I realized that just like that you would not look for me, and so insist on coming for the suit. She did not look at him. What sickness? He got up from the chair he was sitting in. Are you going to fake it now? She looked at him as if she wanted to destroy him with one look. Naomi explained, I don't understand anything, he approached her. No need to. I already succumbed to your charms once. She tried to remove his hands. I don't understand anything. Tell me everything. It seems to me that it's not enough that you and I didn't know each other. So you're accusing me of something else, he looked at her. And the girl saw that the guy really didn't understand what she was saying. Then in the park, she stopped talking and turned away because she felt ashamed again, even though it had been so long. Well, what then in the park? He remembered that, and further, what she was accusing him of, it was unclear. And then she sobbed. So everything, I do not understand anything. We will now sit down, and you will tell me everything in order. He pulled her behind him and put her not on a chair, but on his lap. You really don't know anything. She couldn't believe it. Naomi, when she saw him at her gate, had thought he had been diagnosed with an illness, and now he needed to bring his partner to get tested too. That's why she was acting like this now. I'm listening to you carefully, muttered Sam calmly. Okay, then on the bench, she didn't have time to finish, he interrupted her. I remember that, and I've heard it more than once today. He wanted more than that. They never saw each other once after that, neither he nor she. They didn't know each other's names. What could be the complaints? So you told me that night that you were in our neighborhood at the dentist. She looked at him. I had been, he remembered those words, but he didn't know what she was getting at. The next day, they called everyone there for dental treatment because she couldn't say why. Well, he waited. They found HIV. They had to take tests. She finished her sentence. So what next? He still didn't understand what story she was telling him. You don't understand, there was a sick person there, and you were treating teeth. She didn't finish. She thought he would understand. You thought I was in that clinic and you were infected. He finally got it. Why not? She was sitting with her back to him. Yes, I was in that clinic, but not on that day, but before that. And in fact, if that was the case, I would have been called. You leak contacts there. He pressed her against him and laughed. What you mean? She turned to him. Yep, he nodded, not yet knowing what she had done to cover it all up. Here I am. She covered her eyes with her hands. Uncomprehending, he turned her towards him and took her hands away from her face. You have no idea. And she told him how she had written a letter to her husband, how she had come here, looked after her aunt. Well, you have no idea. The young man didn't know what to say. Wait, she pulled away from him. What? He didn't understand how that could even happen in life. My God, she cried. At that moment, the doors opened and Baba Anna entered the house. Naomi, he's awake, he's hungry, she said. Let him hear, got up from the lad's knees, the girl, and went towards the woman. Yeah, she left and came back a minute later with a baby in her arms. Sam watched all this action and thought he was too late. His beloved stranger was already married and had a child. He even got up and went into the kitchen so as not to disturb her feeding. After that, he stood and thought what to do now. Apparently, he really let the cab go for nothing. Naomi came out to him a few minutes later. She looked at the young man and smiled. You know what they say about coincidences not being random. She couldn't stop smiling. I don't get it. He stared at her. Today in this house, whatever sentence was a mystery to him. It's your son. She lowered her gaze. What do you mean? He furrowed his brow. Now the worst thoughts of the one he had idolized in his head for so long came to mind. Like this, she spread her hands. Then the girl knit him by the arm and led him to the table. There she sat him down, told him how and what, about her husband, about the meeting, how she had decided to take revenge. And that's how it turned out. If it wasn't for that story, she'd probably still be living with the guy who cheated on her. Why didn't you get tested? Sam asked her an elementary question. I worked in a school. It's a small town. I didn't need to explain further. Oh, you poor thing. Why did you leave so quickly? If I'd known your name, I would have found you by now, he hugged her again. Sam, what are we gonna do? She asked him that question, and then she pulled away. What are you doing? He didn't understand her again. I said we, although I don't know. Maybe it's a coincidence again today. She looked at him fearfully. What are you talking about? How many months I've been looking for you? My friends helped me. I know all the girls in the city by sight. He did not deceive her. Do you know how afraid I was of this disease that I still have not registered, John? The girl confessed to him. That's great, but now he will have a normal middle name, smiled the young man. I'm afraid not if Evan hasn't divorced me. She lowered her gaze again. That's okay. Know that you'll be fine from now on. Sam pulled her close again. Have you been thinking about me? She couldn't believe that everything that was happening right now was true. You have no idea how. He wouldn't let her go. I couldn't stop thinking about you at first either. I've always been modest. I've never done anything like that. I've never even kissed in public, she confessed to him. Well, we were not in public. He remembered how she had an ice cream over her lip, which he wanted to remove, leaned over and kissed the girl. At that moment, Anna entered the house again. She looked at the young people and could not understand anything. Is your husband yours? She asked, pointing at Sam. No, but she looked up at him. I'll be there soon. He turned to his grandmother and smiled. Great. Get her out of this neck of the woods. The girl has talent and she buried it here. The woman stopped talking. Do you want something else? He realized that there was a continuation in this tirade. Will you accept her, son? Baba Anna let her eyes go. He's mine, Sam said calmly, not doubting it. What do you mean? The woman turned to Naomi. I'll tell you later, the girl promised, though she knew she never would. All right, stay. The grandmother waved her hand at them and left the house. Are you coming with me? He asked the girl. Where to? She wondered. To where I live, he said calmly. I don't know. She turned to the bed where her son was sleeping. Naomi, this can't be happening. I've been coming to this for so long. He snuggled into her shoulder. Okay, I promise to think about it, she said. Okay, I have a friend's wedding coming up. I ordered you a suit. That's the only reason I found you. In fact, you could say it was my mother who showed you to me. He sat back and smiled. Oh, it wasn't on purpose, she sighed. Of course, I just saw you. I decided to meet you by any means necessary. He pulled her to him again and hugged her. Sam, she just looked at him and couldn't believe that this was how life worked. Once again, the girl remembered all the books and movies she had ever read or watched, and it was all just there. Are you with me? He asked her the question again. Yes, she nodded. What did she have to lose? After all, she'd been through so much before. Now that she knew for sure she had no diagnosis, she could do anything. Then a couple days here and we'll go to my place. He was happy. I agree. By now she was already snuggling up to him herself. She had missed a strong male shoulder for so long. That's great. You can't imagine how happy my mom will be. They lay in bed in the evening. I'm a little embarrassed, she said it, but she remembered that night in the park. She didn't think about it then. Everything will work out. You will meet my friend, his future wife. We will be family friends, he said, and imagined how Alex will be surprised when he realizes that everything he said is true. The next day, Naomi told Sam that it was necessary to say goodbye to the neighbors. He didn't mind, even talked Maria's husband into going into town and shopping there. Everything was going great so far. You know I own this house, Naomi asked. How would I know that? He looked at her surprised. Well, you should know, she kissed the young man. It's good. We'll hire a crew. They'll do everything, and we'll have a cottage in the south. He hugged her. The most amazing thing began to happen next. When Sam took the plane tickets, Naomi realized that they were going to a city that was very close to where she was born and her mother lived. They got on the plane, flew. The girl was silent. They landed. John was nervous the whole way, probably because of his mother, because she had the same attitude. Let's go, we should be met. Sam looked to see where Alex's car was. They pulled up, loaded their things into the trunk, drove off. Almost the whole way Naomi was silent. She just didn't know what to say. But when they pulled into her hometown, she couldn't believe it. Let's go to our place. The girls will get acquainted right away, Alex suggested. No, I have to go home first, Naomi said. My place? Sam turned to her. No, to your place, she smiled. I don't get it. He was very surprised. Sam, this is the town where I was born and lived until I left with my husband to where we met, she began to explain to him. I mean, we've always lived in such close proximity, and he smiled. Apparently, she was happy. Alex drove them to the house where Naomi's mother lived. They got out with all their things there. Are you with me? She turned to him. Of course, I have to see my future mother-in-law and meet her. He took the luggage and they went. When the mother opened the doors, she looked at her daughter and the young man. She was just in shock. Mamia, I'm sorry I was gone so long. They entered the apartment. Daughter. She hugged her and started kissing her. Meet your grandson, John, and this is Sam. The girl looked at the woman. Naomi, she couldn't help herself and cried. It's okay, they passed. The woman kept the baby in her arms. She just couldn't believe that her daughter had lived alone somewhere, had given birth, and hadn't even told her about it. I believe everything's gonna be okay now, the woman said. All right, ladies, get ready. My mom's worried too, Sam told them. Yes, now, no one argued with him anymore. They got into a cab and drove to where the young man lived. When they got upstairs and a woman opened the door, for a few seconds everyone just stood there looking at each other. Mom, are we just going to stand on the doorstep like this? Sam asked her. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm confused. The woman let them into the apartment. Mommy, meet Naomi. This is Naomi, your future daughter-in-law. This is John, your grandson, and this is Naomi's mother. The young man introduced everyone. How's that? The landlady didn't understand. Sometimes life is unpredictable and anything can happen, smiled the son. They all sat down at the table. When they started the conversation, it seemed it would never end. Sam's mother and Naomi stayed home. John was asleep, so they left him for a while too. And the young ones went to Alex and his fiancée's house. Do you think your friends will accept me? Naomi asked the young man. Why shouldn't they accept you? You're with me and I'm the best friend. He didn't understand. Well, things happen, she smiled at him. Yes, I know that. He kissed her for the umpteenth time. They stopped at the entrance, got out of the car, thanked the cab driver. At that moment, Naomi saw a familiar figure. Nancy. She was happy to see her childhood friend on the bench. Naomi, what are you doing here? She was surprised too. Here, meet Sam. This is Sam. We're here to meet his friend, the girl said. Nice to meet you, Nancy. The girl looked at him. Okay, we're off, said Naomi. I'm in this entryway too. Let's go together. Nancy didn't want to let them go. They entered, went up to the second floor. Sam went to the door. Nancy rushed there as well. Are you going to this apartment too? She looked surprised. Yes, Sam nodded. Naomi, it's Sveka who's getting married, Nancy announced excitedly. It can't be. Turned to the young man, he was silent. They entered the apartment. On the threshold, they were met by the owner in an embrace with his future bride. Casey, Naomi threw herself into her arms. How was that possible? Sam stood there looking at them. What do you mean? The girls didn't understand. I've been looking for her for so long, and you were just there to tell me at least about my mom. Sam looked at Casey. So you didn't even know her name? Alex interrupted him. That's right, the young man agreed with them. The young men all made their way into the room. They sat around the table and couldn't get enough of talking. Nancy, will you mind if I make Naomi my witness? Casey asked the girl. Of course not. If he's the witness, she pointed to Sam, I'll concede. That was the deal. They sat for a while longer and then separated. I don't believe it's real, Naomi said. Well, you can see that things have happened in your life. He wouldn't let her go, as if he was afraid of losing her again. You're not letting me go to my mom's tonight, Naomi guessed. I'm not letting you go anywhere else at all. He pulled her in and held her tight against him. They returned, the women still in the apartment where Sam lived. They told about the girlfriends. Naomi's mom was just shocked. And then the girl told about the cabin in the south. The moms immediately said that after the wedding they would go there and clean it up. Are we having a wedding? The girl smiled and looked at Sam. If you don't mind, I'm all for it. He kissed her again and again. I first need to know if I'm divorced or not. Naomi looked at her mother. Divorced? The papers came long ago, she confirmed. All right, I just have to register John, Naomi said sadly. Why so sad? Sam didn't understand. I don't know, it's just, she shrugged. After that, the young man pulled her into his room. There he told her about the apartment. But if her mother was going to leave, there was no hurry. "Shall we just sign?" Naomi asked. "Are you okay with that?" He was embarrassed. Only now he thought he could have come with a ring. Yes, she turned to him, wrapped her arms around him, and pressed herself against him. "You're my one and only love for life. That's how coincidences happen." Sam didn't believe in his happiness.
Voices could be heard outside the open kitchen door. AA was quietly coming down the stairs. When she woke up, she was thirsty. The woman was surprised to find that her husband was not in bed with her. The clock showed the 3rd hour of the night. Where could he have gone at such a time? She thought. There was always a jug of clean water on the table next to the bed, but yesterday she forgot to fill it. "We'll have to go down to the kitchen." Alien slipped her feet into her slippers and went out into the hallway. Walking down the stairs of their big house, she realized that George was in the kitchen and talking quietly with his mother about something. Her mother-in-law lived with them, but before Alien did not notice that her husband and mother-in-law liked to chat at night. She went quietly to the door. "You should have left her a long time ago." Her mother-in-law's voice sounded like the hiss of a cobra. "Mom, stop it." "I love Alien," George spoke in a whisper. But even with the door ajar, you could hear that he was annoyed. "You don't understand, son. I'm taking care of you. I told you right away, don't marry that fool. With your money, with your position, you could have found a better wife. From a normal family. No, Mom. I hate to hear that." George even raised his voice a little. "If you remember when I married Alien, I didn't have any position. Well, I'm sorry. At least I raised you all my life. Put my whole soul into you, worked 2 jobs to give you a decent education so that you could choose a better path in life. Thank you. The best thank you for me is my grandson. And you're depriving me of the opportunity to be a grandmother. Mom, you know, Alien and I have tried to have a child many times, but. In general, if you don't talk to her yourself, file for divorce and kick her out of the house. I will tell Alien everything myself. I will tell you that you have another family." Her mother-in-law's voice sounded resolute, but Alien didn't pay attention to it now. She only heard one thing: another family, another family, another family. The woman almost screamed, her mouth hanging open. She turned around and ran up the stairs to the bedroom. What she heard that night was a terrible discovery for her. If what Anne says is true, then it turns out that George is deceiving her. And how many years does it last? How long has he been living with 2 families? No, it was impossible to believe it. From the first day they met, they loved and cared for each other. And my husband never even offended Alien with a word. Hundreds of small hammers were pounding in his temples. Alien really wanted to wake up. She wanted it all to be some kind of stupid dream, a nightmare that would disappear as soon as she opened her eyes. But it wasn't a dream. She heard her mother-in-law talking to her husband about George having another family. This can't be happening. 10 years ago, Alien and George met at a party, where the girl was invited by her friend Jane. They studied at hairdressing courses together and have already interned at one of the beauty salons. It turned out that her boyfriend's friend, the same George, was throwing a birthday party. It was there that the young people saw each other for the first time. But before that, Jane had been trying to persuade her friend to go to the party for a very long time. "There's nothing for me to wear there," sighed Alien. "Oh, that's not a problem," Jane smiled, opening the closet. Jane began to take out hangers with dresses, blouses, and skirts from the closet. "Choose what you want and can. Then don't even return it," she suggested. "Try on the one that suits you best," Jane said, applying the dress to the Alien. "And this turquoise one with sand will be good for you," Jane claimed, helping her friend try on a dress. "Oh, what are you? I hardly wear them," Alien objected, looking at the white high-heeled shoes. "Put it on," insisted Jane, putting the shoes in front of her friend. "You look great, Alien," Alex said, looking at the girl through the rearview mirror. "I can't wait to drink champagne and dance," Jane supported him. "Well, will we make it?" Jane was indignant as they drove down the street. "Alex, the leading car. Calm down, of course we'll make it, girls." Alien drove and looked out the window at the quiet night area and the lanterns illuminating the dark streets, thinking about how beautiful the city is at night. What awaits her at this party? She didn't know, so she was worried. After taking the elevator to the 10th floor, they immediately heard loud music and cheerful voices. Alex rang the bell next to the front door. No one opened it. "It's no use. No one will hear the bell," he said and pulled the door. It turned out to be open. The trio entered the hallway, and Alien realized that she found herself in some other world unknown to her. It was a very large apartment, well furnished with expensive furniture. Colored lights ran across the ceiling in the living room, and girls and boys danced under them. Noticing the guests, the tall, stately host of the party rushed to them. Finally, the birthday boy hugged his friend. "I thought you weren't coming," Dottie greeted Jane, and she pushed Alien forward. "Let's get acquainted. George. This is an alien. She's my best friend. That's the kind of girl." Jane gave a thumbs up. "Very nice," said the guy, holding out his hand. "I'm George. Come on in, join us. Don't be shy about anything or anyone. In general, open up, guys." Alien noted that the audience at this party is very interesting. The girls in beautiful outfits behaved confidently and easily. They danced and had fun. They were not shy of anyone. The guys supported the girls. There were plates of snacks on the table and even on the windowsills. There were bottles of wine and stronger drinks everywhere. Jane and Alex left Alien, rushing to their friends. They knew almost everyone here. And Alien felt awkward. Suddenly, someone handed her a glass. "Will you have a drink?" It was George. The girl took the glass in her hands. In general, she rarely drank, but then, apparently out of excitement, she drank wine. It tasted good, moderately sweet, and fruity. "I see you're bored. Why aren't you dancing?" the birthday boy asked. "It's a little awkward." "I don't know anyone here," Alien replied timidly. "Do you want me to introduce you?" "Don't. Inconvenient." "But then look. This girl with long hair is Helen. We study together. My childhood friend eats something there all the time. We went to the same kindergarten, can you imagine? And we're still friends. Friends are sitting on the couch and girls are lighting up there. Do you remember?" Alien nodded, although she still couldn't remember all the names at once. "Don't be shy. We have a good company, all our own." George served her a canapé with cheese and olives. "I'll try. Can I go out on the balcony to get some air?" the girl asked. "Of course. It's really stuffy in here." He led the alien to a large loggia. From the 10th floor of the high-rise building, there was a wonderful view of the city, shining with lights. A light wind blew, bringing a breath of fresh air. The wine was slightly dizzying. Slow music came from the room. "Come on, let's dance." George extended his hand to the alien. The girl turned around and saw that Jane and Alex were dancing, clinging to each other. For some reason, she also wanted to dance. George turned out to be a gallant, strong guy. He moved very well. Dancing with him, Alien felt more confident among unfamiliar guys. "Where do you study?" the guy asked. "At a hairdressing course," replied Alien. "Will you make people beautiful?" "Something like that." Since childhood, Alien wanted to work in a barber shop like her mother. Therefore, after graduation from the orphanage, there was no choice for her. "And you?" "I'm in my 5th year," George replied, smiling. "I'll be a journalist. All my life I have dreamed of traveling around the country and showing people what is happening in different regions. I want to work in the news." "Great. It's a great profession." Alien supported him. "You're no worse off." George smiled even wider. "Can you imagine if there were no hairdressers, how terrible the correspondence would look on TV?" They laughed. Alien has become so easy with this simple and very attractive guy. After a few hours, the guys began to disperse. Alex called a taxi, leaving his car near George's house. Saying goodbye, the birthday boy asked Aliona for a phone number. "Can I call you sometime?" he asked. "Call me." Alien smiled. She was very tired, but she was glad that her friend was able to persuade her to go to visit. In the taxi, smiling mysteriously, Jane looked at the alien. "But George liked you." She poked her friend lightly in the side. "I haven't left your side all evening." "Stop it. Just a very polite and hospitable host." Alien lowered her eyes because she liked this guy herself. "Oh, a hospitable host. If you want to know, he is also one of the best students in the course, and an enviable groom. By the way, Alex, confirm my words." "Aha, an enviable groom without a bride." The guy laughed. "And this case is fixable." Jane persisted. "Let us take our alien and marry him off." "Oh, that's enough already. There's my house." The girl pointed to her 5-story building to the driver. The friends said goodbye, and Alien headed for the entrance. She was terribly sleepy. "I didn't even have the strength to take a shower." The girl changed her clothes and collapsed on the sofa. Drowning with her head in a soft pillow, Alien slept almost until lunch. When she opened her eyes, the afternoon sun was shining through the curtains. The girl stretched and went to the bathroom. Today she had to go to the courses in the evening, and also have time to buy groceries and cook food. There's almost nothing in the fridge at all. Entering the kitchen, she put the kettle on and took a can of coffee out of the cupboard. It was empty. Coffee would be nice now, but I'll have to drink tea. Alien thought. A phone trilled from the room. "Hello," the girl replied. "Hello, this is George. So I decided to call you to find out how you're doing. How are you feeling?" "Hi, it's all good." For some reason, Aliona's heart began to beat faster. "Let's meet tonight, go out somewhere?" the guy suggested. "I have a course tonight." "That's it. It's agreed. I'll meet you." After the course, the address was sent. Alien did not have time to come to her senses, did not have time to answer something, began to doubt, and George had already said goodbye and hung up. She was standing by the window and did not even notice how a smile was opening on her face. She really wanted to see this confident, grown-up, strong guy again. The girl hardly waited for the end of classes. George was waiting for her at the entrance. She had noticed his figure in the window a long time ago. "Hello," she said, and her heart began to beat very hard. "Hello." He held out his hand to her. "Come on." "Where to?" "I know a good place here. Let's sit down and have a bite. You must be hungry, right?" George was smiling with such a charming smile that the girl couldn't resist. Alien really didn't mind eating something right now. She didn't have time to go shopping. The small cafe with only a few tables was calm and quiet. A few customers were talking quietly, drinking coffee. The soft, calm music was relaxing. "Order whatever you want," the guy suggested when the waitress brought the menu. "And what will you do?" Alien asked. "I see. You're shy." George understood her question in his own way. "Well, then I'll make the order myself. You don't mind?" "Okay." The young man ordered a salad, roast, and dessert for himself and the alien. Watching her eat, George smiled. "I am so pleased that you agreed to meet with me," he said when they had finished dinner and were drinking coffee. "It's strange, it feels like I've known you for many years. And we often sit like this in a cafe," replied Alien. "But I don't really know anything about you at all." "What should I tell you? I was born in this city. I've lived here all my life. My mother raised me alone. Since childhood, she has instilled in me that the subject of my father is taboo. So even before school, I stopped asking her who my dad was. My mother had a hard time alone, but she did everything so that I didn't need anything. I am very grateful to her for that." "And who is your mother?" Alien asked. "Now she has her own publishing agency." "Oh, I see why you want to become a journalist." "I'm already working. My mother often gives me orders for publications so that I have my own money. It teaches you to work, so to speak. I've been writing for her publishing house since the 3rd year." Their cups had been empty for a long time, and there were no people in the cafe anymore. "Shall we go?" George suggested. They went outside. The warm May breeze was blowing Alina's hair. They walked along the square, enjoying each other's company. She didn't want to go home at all. The girl's soul has not had such calmness and a sense of security for a long time. "Well, will you tell me about yourself?" George asked. Alien was silent. She didn't know what to tell this confident guy who had everything going so well in his life. He was lucky. At least he had a mother who probably just adores her son, cares about him, loves him with all her soul. Alien couldn't boast of that. In her life, everything was exactly the opposite. That's how the world works. Fate is not kind to everyone. She has been singling out someone since childhood, and there is no explanation why this is happening. "My mother was a hairdresser," the girl began to tell about herself. "Well, then I also understand why you chose this profession. Did you follow in your mom's footsteps?" "Yes, she has been gone for many years. She died." "I'm sorry. And the father?" Alien didn't want to continue this topic at all. She had long ago taught herself not to remember her childhood. Her father drank, sometimes raised his hand against her mother, but she loved him very much. Despite her young age, the girl still remembered some of the scenes that frightened her as a child. She was forced to huddle in a corner, hide behind a closet or under a table. One day he got drunk, and a man died in a fight because of him. That's how he ended up in prison. He died of grief there. The mother has now started drinking alcohol. She often left her 5-year-old daughter alone at home for a few days, going on a spree. The woman was kicked out of work. At the barber shop, her hands often shook, and customers complained about the smell of fumes. Seeing all this, the neighbors called the Social Security staff, and after a while the mother was deprived of parental rights. After that, the mother was completely drunk. From a beautiful, blooming, and always well-groomed woman, she turned into a monster. The booze ruined her, and one day the neighbors found the girl's mother dead in her apartment. The grandmother took custody of the girl and took her to herself. But by the time Alien had to go to first grade, Grandma died of a heart attack. That's how Alien got into an orphanage. The girl did not want to tell all this to a guy who was doing well in his life, and who liked her so much. Other people's problems and failures, even if they do not depend on us, are not needed by anyone. So she kept quiet for a bit and decided to lie. "I never knew him either." "I see. You and I are friends in misfortune, it turns out." George wanted to defuse the situation. He saw that the conversation he started went in the wrong direction, made Alien sad, and he didn't want to spoil the evening. But the girl was already immersed in the memories that she had so diligently banished from her head. She was almost good at it. Only George brought her back to the past. 2 years ago, she left the orphanage. The girl was lucky. Very quickly she was given an apartment, like an orphan. Some savings in the account helped the girl at first, and everything seemed to be fine. But something happened that made her look at the world with different eyes and realize that it was not as kind and warm as the one in which she lived. She was raised in an orphanage. There, educators took care of her and other children, taught them how to live, helped, listened, and pitied them. One day, returning home late at night from a part-time job, she ran into a group of guys. They started molesting the girl. There was no one nearby. These 3 attacked the alien. She couldn't even make a sound out of fear. The horror of that evening haunted her for several weeks, until she realized that she was pregnant. She made an interruption. She did not want to raise a child without knowing who his father was. Jane's friend, whom she had already befriended, helped organize everything. I found a doctor who would agree to do everything quickly, without additional examinations, collecting certificates and passing tests. If it wasn't for Jane, she would have gone crazy. The friend was the only person who knew about this terrible incident. "Have I offended you in some way?" George asked, noticing that the girl had withdrawn into herself. "Are you thinking about something?" "I'm just really tired." "I'm sorry," said Alien. They had already reached her entrance. The stars were shining in the sky. The barely opened leaves on the trees glistened softly in the light breeze. George took Alien's hands, turned her towards him, and looked intently into her eyes. How fluffy her eyelashes are, he thought. "I really don't want to part with you." The guy said quietly, Let's go out of town for the weekend and have a little picnic. I'll take my mom's car, we'll go for a ride. I promise you won't regret it." I know such a wonderful place where no sad thoughts can come to mind. I'll think about it, Alien replied. I have to go. Yes, of course. I will hope to see you again. He wanted to kiss her on the cheek, but the girl had already turned around and walked to the door. That night, Alien fell asleep with mixed feelings in her soul. On the one hand, she liked George so much, she had never experienced anything like this before. A strange excitement enveloped her in a soft veil. But the fact that he had stirred up the most unpleasant memories in her overshadowed all the pleasant moments of the evening. Life was unfair to her. But Alien has long since come to terms with this, and tried to live independently so that someone from above would see that she was worthy of happiness. She will do everything for this. The morning began with a loud doorbell. She woke up, looked at her watch. 9:30 in the morning. Who was brought in so early? Slipping her feet into her slippers, she went into the hallway and opened the door. Jane appeared on the threshold. Are you still asleep? The friend flew into the apartment with lightning speed, kicked off her high-heeled shoes and proceeded to the kitchen. The girl followed her, rubbing her eyes. Is that how you can sleep when I have such news for you? What's the news? Coffee first, I really want to cheer up. Jane has already opened the closet and took out the still unopened jar that Galen bought the day before when she went to the grocery store. What are you standing for? Put the kettle on. Why are you so excited? From the powerful energy of her friend, Alien woke up to the end. She filled the kettle with water, put it on the stove and turned on the gas. Late last night, the owner of the salon called me and said that she was taking you and me to work. Think about it, something happened there. One of the masters mixed up the compositions and the oxidizer and dyed her hair blue. There was such a scandal. In short, this creative was fired right away, and the hostess called me. Come on. Alien was surprised that such a layman could work in the salon. Yes, and I called you right away, but you didn't answer the phone, and then you became unavailable at all. By the way, your phone is out of range right now. Jane cut off a piece of sausage in a masterly way and was preparing to start breakfast. Anyway, get ready. We have to be in the salon by 11 o'clock. Can you imagine? Now you and I have a permanent job. Where were you yesterday? Why didn't you answer? Jane shouted loudly so that the alien could hear. I was walking. The answer came from the bathroom. Jane would not have been surprised by her friend's response if she had said that she had been sleeping or reading, or at the very least watching the series. But for Alien to walk, and even so late. The girl still remembered that terrible incident and knew that Alien tries not to go alone in the evenings. Her friend's answer put her in a stupor, so she wasn't walking alone. When she came out of the bathroom, Jane was already all turned on with curiosity. Well, who were we walking with? What is it? She asked, smiling slyly. With George. Alien simply replied. Yes, did he ask you out? What date? Come on. We just went for a walk, sat in a cafe. Then he walked me home. Alien's cheeks suddenly turned pink. I'm happy for you, girlfriend. George is a great guy. And it's great that he liked you so much that he invited you for a walk the very next day after meeting you. And you didn't want to go to the party yet. It doesn't mean anything, Alien insisted. We just went for a walk. Okay, just so simple. It was not in Jane's rules to pry into other people's personal affairs. Come on, get ready. From that day on, Alien's life began to change for the better. The hostess of the beauty salon, where they had been interning all this time, greeted the girls quite affably. She showed them their workplace. The girls still had one for two. They had to work in shifts, but it suited them. Alien is completely immersed in her work. She was fascinated by everything that happened in the salon and liked it when the clients left happy, refreshed, rejuvenated. The magic of hairdressing fascinated her. Here comes a lady who is well over 50, and after half an hour no one will give her that age. A new hairstyle, a beautiful hair color without a hint of gray, styling that suits her very well. The client is happy. Alien is proud of its work. Carried away, she almost completely forgot about Igor, but he called on Friday night. Hi, have you considered my offer to go on a picnic? Alien was taken by surprise by this call. She wanted to see the man again, next to whom her heart began to beat faster. "I work until lunch on Saturday," she replied hesitantly. "It's okay, we'll go after lunch." The guy said confidently. "Agreed?" "Okay." Alien agreed. "I'll pick you up at 2:00 dot." "Okay, yes, I'll be waiting." She hung up the phone and wondered if she was in too much of a hurry, going alone with a guy out of town, where there would be no one else. She liked George, but the negative experience of communicating with guys was alarming. She pushed bad thoughts away from herself, persuaded that everything would be fine. George just couldn't hurt her. He is decent, intelligent, educated, well-mannered. She was not mistaken and did not regret for a minute that she went on a picnic with George. He picked her up, as promised. They raced along a country highway, enjoying the wind spinning in the car, through the open windows and the music playing from the radio. Alien admired the beautiful landscapes flashing by the window, and George looked at her and smiled. He brought her to the shore of a small lake. "How do you like the place? What is it?" he asked, opening the trunk of the car to get groceries and a folding barbecue. "It's very beautiful. It's amazing. I'm glad you like it." George handed Alien a basket of fruits and vegetables, and he took care of the meat. "In general, it will be very crowded here in the summer. While the bathing season has not started, you can count on privacy. And I can't swim at all." "They didn't teach this in our orphanage," said Alien. "They taught me a lot of things, but they didn't teach me to swim." "What's the problem? Do you want me to teach you?" "Well, when summer comes, of course." George laughed. "I don't know." The girl was slicing tomatoes and cucumbers with might and main, laying out apples on plastic plates. In between, she watched George masterfully cook meat on coals and enjoyed the aroma of an almost finished barbecue. It was a wonderful day. They had a great time, enjoyed delicious food, listened to music, laughed, and just talked about different topics. George no longer touched on the topic of the past. She felt at ease and comfortable with him. At some point, the guy thought about it and looked at Alien carefully. "You know, when you came to the party that night, I just couldn't take my eyes off you," he said softly. "You are special, not like the girls from my department, like childhood friends, like those around me." Alien was silent, not knowing what to say to such a revelation of the guy. "I want you to be my girlfriend. I want to get to know you better every day, be there for you, help and protect you." Goosebumps ran down Aliona's body. I have never said such words before. The girl was pleased, but she did not know what to answer in such cases, so she continued to remain silent. "Don't you like me?" George asked, looking into her blue eyes. "I like you," Alien replied softly. "But are you sure you need someone like me? You have an education, a nice apartment, Mom, after all. And I'm just a hairdresser." "It doesn't matter at all. I'm sure you're going to be very good. And don't worry about Mom. She'll like you, I'm sure. I think you're in a hurry. We don't know each other at all." Alien picked a blade of grass and fiddled with it in her hands. "Don't worry, I won't rush you. I just want us to be together. I just want to see you more often." "I agree. Let's meet up. And sometimes spend time together." They smiled at each other. The situation lightened up by itself. George brought the alien home when it was already dark outside. Without knowing why, she was in no hurry to get out of the car. She was pleased to be with him. She did not want to part at all. George looked at her and was silent. And then he took my hand, brought his face closer, and kissed me. When she opened her eyes, he was looking at her and smiling. "See you later." He should have said goodbye, but he still wouldn't let go of her hand. "Yes, see you," Alien said softly. After going up to the apartment, she sat down on the sofa and closed her eyes. There was a viscous silence in the room. I didn't want to turn on the TV or even the light. The girl felt George's kiss on her lips over and over again, and some kind of unrestrained, soft, warm happiness filled her from the inside. It's been 6 months. George defended his diploma and worked at his mother's publishing house. During this time, the girl managed to get regular customers in the beauty salon who wanted only her to serve them. The hostess often praised the girl. You have a talent, alien, she said. It's not for nothing that you have such a record. I'm glad I didn't make a mistake about you. George and Alien called each other every day. Whenever possible we met, spent evenings together, went to cafes, went to the cinema, just walked. The guy, as promised, did not rush the alien. There was no intimacy between them during this time, only kisses and hugs. One day they settled comfortably in a cafe on the embankment, choosing a table by the window. It was drizzling outside, nailing the yellowed foliage to the asphalt, and the wind was trying hard to disperse the damp leaves. You know, George said, holding the girl's hand, I want you to meet my mom. I think it's time. I love you, and anyway, tomorrow I'm inviting you to dinner with us. Does your mom know about me? The girl asked. She knows I have a girlfriend, but that's all. So I want you to get to know each other, and our relationship has moved to another level. What do you mean? I want you to be able to come to our house as my beloved girl. I want everyone to know that we are together, that I have you and you have me. I'm afraid your mom won't like me. Don't worry about it. She will accept any choice I make. Mom loves me and will be happy if I'm happy. Alien nodded silently. But she was not completely sure that they were doing everything right. However, she hoped that everything would go well, and decided that she would definitely prepare properly for this meeting. Alien knew who would help and support her. When she got home, the first thing she did was call Jane. Can you come? She asked her friend. Right now? Something happened? Yes, it happened. Please come. Alien knew that Jane would come rushing at the first call. You don't need to explain anything to her over the phone. Half an hour later, a friend was already ringing the doorbell. I saw you at work today. What could have happened in a few hours? Jane asked, walking into the kitchen. Will you make coffee? Yes, I'll put the kettle on now. Alien took out the cups. What happened is that George wants to introduce me to his mother tomorrow. Come on. Jane knew, of course, that Alien and George were dating, that they were both in love. She also knew that apart from kissing, there was nothing between them. Therefore, I treated this relationship more like a platonic one. So I was surprised that George was already taking Alien to his home to introduce him to his mother. Usually it's not like that for couples. They sleep together a couple of times. If everything remains the same, introduce them to their parents, or even go to get acquainted when a pregnancy test shows 2 stripes. And here everything is somehow childish, and they are already going to bow to their mother. Yes, today he told me that tomorrow we are going to have dinner at their house. I'm really worried, Jane. What if she doesn't like me? Oh my God. Do you want to live with her or something? I already thought something incredible had happened to you. And then, just think, sit at the table, eat something homemade. You get different questions. This is usually the case. That's what I'm afraid of. What am I going to tell about myself? That my father was a criminal, my mother got drunk, and I grew up in an orphanage. She put her palms to her eyes, rubbing them to calm her pulse. Don't tell me that. Get off the subject or say you're dead. Usually after such an answer, tactful people do not ask how it happened. Well, that's a lie. Alien objected. You can't start a relationship with a lie. And George, didn't you lie about your parents? Jane asked. I wasn't lying, I just didn't say anything. He saw that this topic was upsetting me and did not touch it again. So don't tell his mother either. Jane hugged her friend by the shoulders and worries. And so everything will be fine. Don't you understand? It's rude not to answer questions. Alien, pull yourself together. You better think about what you will appear in front of your mother, advised a friend. It's true, the girl agreed. His mother is probably such an elegant lady, owns a publishing house, drives a car, and what a luxurious apartment they have. You know that. That's exactly why you have to be in all your glory. Come on, let's see what's in your closet that's decent. The girls went into the room. Jane opened the closet door in a masterly way and critically examined her friend's wardrobe one by one. Hangers with dresses and skirts flew onto the sofa. Listen, put on this knitted dress. A friend held out a hanger with a blue monochrome dress. Firstly, according to the weather. Secondly, nothing flashy. You will look quite decent. Do you think? Of course, it's better to pay attention to the appearance. Make light makeup and you can curl the hair at the tips. That's all. Jane seemed very pleased with herself. As always, she helped her friend solve the problem and was proud of it. Come on, you'll worry when we choose a wedding dress, laughed Jane. Come on, you're kidding. And what if he goes to introduce his mother? Then he wants to introduce her as a bride. It's like you came from another world. All guys do that. No, we haven't even had that yet. Alien spoke softly. And you didn't have that, as you say, just because you don't want to. George would have been glad for a long time. I'm sure of it. Jane, stop making me blush. She waved her friend away, pressed her cool palms to her hot cheeks. On the one hand, the girl was grateful to her friend for her support, but on the other, Jane's outspoken statements drove her crazy every time, put her into a stupor, made her blush. Nevertheless, she agreed with the advice about the dress, put it aside, and put the rest of the clothes back in the closet. The girls went into the hallway. That's it. I ran, Jane said, giving her friend a peck on the cheek. Tell me later how it went. Of course, what are you talking about? Who else am I going to tell? Alien closed the door behind her friend and looked at herself in the mirror. Still, George shouldn't have come up with this introduction to Mom, she thought. Had it been bad for the two of them all these months? After seeing the alien home, George drove home. Opening the apartment door, he shouted loudly. Mom, I'm at home. I'm in the kitchen, son. Go to dinner, Anne replied. You're hungry as a beast. The guy sat down at the table, and his mother put a plate of fried potatoes and sausages in front of him. But tomorrow you still have to cook a normal dinner with everything that should be on the table, the guy declared. Yes, and what kind of holiday is tomorrow? Anne asked, sitting down opposite her son and pouring him tea. And tomorrow, Mom, I'll introduce you to my girlfriend, George said solemnly. Unexpectedly, Mom smiled, propping her chin on her hand and leaning on the table. Nothing unexpected. We've been dating for 6 months now, George said. Give me the bread, please. The woman handed her son a plate with sliced bread. She took a deep breath. Anne knew that George was dating someone. He often talked on the phone with some girl. In addition, she could not help but notice that her son was simply glowing with happiness, did not stay at work too long, and came home late. She did not ask George about his personal life. I knew he would tell me everything himself when the time came. And now, apparently, that time has come. Once I decided to introduce her to my girlfriend, so it's very serious. Can you tell me a little bit who she is? Mother asked, so that I would at least know what to talk about with her. She's just a wonderful girl. George Ann interrupted. That's enough. The guy wiped his mouth with a napkin and got up from the table. Anne didn't like her son's answer. The smile quickly disappeared from her face. Mom, I hope there won't be any sausages on the table tomorrow. Cook everything beautifully and deliciously, as you know how, George asked. I have absolutely no time to cook. Offended, the woman decided to order food in a restaurant, since she is such a gourmet. Mom, she's not a gourmet, but my favorite girl. And I want your acquaintance to go well, so that she likes you and you like her. George hugged his mother's shoulders as much as he could on the cheek to make everything very tasty. I'm going to my room. The woman was left alone in the kitchen, confused. After sitting at the table for a couple more minutes, she began to clear away the dishes. Her boy has grown up, matured, and now she is no longer the main person in his life, but some strange girl. And so he decided to bring her to their house. This situation was expected. Any mother knows that sooner or later this moment will come. That's how life works. Anne also understood that time was running out. The son may very soon have his own family, and she will have grandchildren. It's only one thing to understand and know that it will happen there sometime in the distant future. And another thing is to stand on the threshold and meet the one who has captured the heart of her son. A sharp stab of jealousy pecked at her heart. But Anne did not want to quarrel with her son. Dinner will still have to be cooked, although there is absolutely no time to run around the shops. The woman sat down at the table again, took out her smartphone, and opened a website with grocery delivery at home. The next day, Anne called her secretary into her office. "Angela, I'm going to leave early today," she told the girl. "You will control everything here, and do not forget to close the office." "Has something happened?" Angela asked. "Yes, George is bringing his girlfriend to meet him today. We need to cook dinner," the boss replied. "Wow, congratulations." "With what, Angela?" Anne was angry. "I have no idea who this girl is, what she wants from my son, and the unknown, scares and worries. And there are so many scams around who are chasing young and successful people." "You're right," Angela nodded her head. "I'll do everything, I'll check it, I'll close it." "That's good," the boss calmed down. The woman took her purse, took out a keychain with car keys and left the office, and Angela remained standing in the office thinking. She had liked the boss's son for a long time. She even showed him signs of attention, often brought coffee, and also dragged homemade pastries from home, tried to feed the guy. He always thanked her, but he didn't pay much attention to the girl. Angela knew and believed that gradually she would be able to win his heart. But now all her dreams are falling apart. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Anne took off her apron and hurried into the hallway. Her son was standing in front of her, holding the hand of a girl of about 20 years old. Her son's friend was smiling shyly. "Mom, meet Alien," said George. "Alien, this is my mom, Anne." "It's a pleasure," the girl said, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. George's mother looked at her carefully, waiting for her son to help the girl take off her coat. Alien was wearing a simple knitted blue dress, long blonde hair curled over her shoulders. Anne noted that her son has good taste. The girl is really beautiful. He keeps himself modest. She even breathed a sigh of relief for a moment. Alien, in turn, saw a beautiful, statuesque, elegantly dressed woman in front of her. She looked like she couldn't even be 40 years old. "Come into the living room," George's mom suggested. "I'll be right there. I have more hot stuff in the oven." "Yes, come on in, don't be shy. Make yourself at home." George pushed the girl towards the open doors to the hall. She had been here once before, at a party. But today the room looked very different. There was a beautifully set table in the center. The room was illuminated by a large crystal chandelier with many ringing droplets. There was silence. "Don't be afraid of anything," George whispered in the girl's ear and helped her sit down at the table. "Mom, do you need any help?" Anne was already entering the living room, carrying a platter of baked meat in her hands. "You'd better sit down at the table." There was silence in the room for a while. No one knew where to start a conversation. Mom was the first to break this awkwardness. "Son, take care of the guest and me. Put the salad on." She smiled at the alien. While George was putting food on plates, the woman decided to ask the girl. "Alien, tell us about yourself. What do you do?" "Are you a student?" Anne asked. "No, I'm working," the girl replied softly. "Yes? I wonder who." "Mom, she works as a hairdresser in a beauty salon." George was ahead of the girl with the answer. "She is very talented. She is appreciated at work." "Didn't you get an education?" The guy's mother continued the interrogation. "No, unfortunately," replied Alien. "I took a hairdressing course and immediately went to work." The mother looked at her son significantly. Her first impression of the pretty girl was already beginning to deteriorate. Anne saw an educated girl with a status, or at least a good profession, next to George. "And here's the hairdresser. And who are your parents? What do they do?" Alien was silent, head down. She expected such questions, but it turned out to be very difficult to answer. "Mom, Alien has no parents," George answered for the girl. "And anyway, what are you bothering about? Let the guest eat in peace." "What do you mean there are no parents?" The woman put down her fork and knife. "And who raised you, supported you?" "I grew up in an orphanage." Finally, Alien gathered her willpower and answered decisively. Natalia Ilyinichna's eyebrows went up. She was silent for a while, and then got up, took a dish from the table and asked her son George, "Will you help me make tea?" "Yes, of course." The guy got up from the table and followed his mother. When they disappeared through the door, Alien gathered up the empty plates and headed to the kitchen to help clear the table too. Walking down the hallway, she heard Anne's voice. "Are you crazy? Who did you bring into the house?" She chastised George, the hairdresser from the orphanage. "Are you going to marry her?" "We haven't discussed it yet, but I really love Alien," the guy replied. "Over my dead body, do you hear? I will never let you ruin your life by associating it with this beggar from the orphanage." Suddenly, mother and son noticed in the doorway with plates in their hands. The girl took a few steps forward and put the dishes on the table. "Here, I picked it up from the table," she said, turned around and walked away. "Mom, there must be at least some sense of tact," George said angrily. "How can you not understand? She's my girlfriend." The door lock clanged loudly. It was Alien who left, slamming the door. George rushed after him, putting on his jacket and hat as he went. "Alien, stop." He caught up with her in the yard. "Yes, you stop, I say." He grabbed the girl, turned her around, and held her tightly. "I'm not letting you go anywhere," he said, looking into her eyes. "I love you. And I will never enter your house again," the girl said softly. "Never mind. Mom just doesn't know you yet." He began to kiss her cheeks, wet with tears. Resentment against a woman who, in the first hour of meeting her, poured mud over her, poured out salty drops. She was crying like a child who had been wronged. She was very hurt and hurt. Did she really deserve such hurtful words for all that Alien had to go through? After all, she didn't say a bad word to George's mother. "I want to go home," the girl said, calming down a little. "Come on, I'm with you. I'm not coming back either until Mom apologizes to you." They caught a taxi and got to the Alien house very quickly. George, as usual, stopped at the girl's entrance, hugged and kissed her on the lips. And she suddenly took his hand and said, "Let's go." She pulled George towards the door. They ran up to the floor. The girl hurriedly opened the door. Everything that happened after that should have happened a long time ago. George dreamed of intimacy with his girlfriend, but waited for her to want it herself. And she wanted to. Today, more than ever, she needed his embrace, his love. He was whispering, "I love you. I love you." When dawn broke, George said, "I want to always be with you. Let's get married." She did not immediately understand the meaning of his words. She sat up, covered herself with a blanket, and looked at George in surprise. "Are you serious?" "It can't be more serious." "What about your mom?" Looking anxiously into the guy's eyes, Alien asked. "What does my mom have to do with it?" he replied. "She has her own life. I am an adult, self-sufficient person. I have a good job. You and I will get along just fine without her help." The girl threw herself on his chest. "I love you so much," she whispered. They spent the whole next day together, cooking lunch together, walking through the streets of the sleeping area, kissing and feeling absolutely happy. After coming home with their shopping, George and Alien began to cook dinner. Suddenly the phone rang. "This is mine," George said and went into the room to answer the phone. Sensing something was wrong, Alien sat down on a chair. From what she could hear from the kitchen, the girl realized that George's mother was calling. "I'm not coming back until you reconsider your attitude towards Alien. Mom," the guy was saying. "Stop shouting." "No, I'll come to work tomorrow as usual." "All right." He returned to the kitchen and saw a sad Alien. "Come on, baby. It's okay. We're together." He hugged the girl, and then suddenly picked her up in his arms and spun her around. "Aren't they going to feed me in this house today?" She laughed and became light and calm that George did not gather at his mother's first call, and did not leave her after what had happened between them. In the morning, Alien cooked breakfast, but George refused, drinking only a cup of coffee. "I have to run home and change before work," he said. "And in the evening?" asked Alien anxiously. "And what about tonight?" "I'll pick you up at the beauty salon after work. Let's go to your place. Or do you not like my constant presence in that apartment?" "I really like it," the girl smiled. George kissed her and left. When he arrived home, his mother was gone. She went to the publishing house. After changing clothes and taking the folder with the manuscripts he was working on, George also hurried to the office. Angela's secretary met him in the hallway. "Hello. Would you like some coffee?" "No, not now, I'm sorry," the guy answered on the move and hurried to the office of the correction service. He was working on a big project and deadlines are tight. "I wanted to have time to complete the planned amount of work in order to spend the evening with Alien." But about 15 minutes later, the internal phone on his desk rang. I called my mother. Without asking Vera if he could come in, he opened the door to his mother's office. "Did you call?" "Well-mannered people say hello first," Anne said without looking up from the papers on the table. "Well-mannered people do not insult people about whom they know nothing at all and respect the choice of others. Hello, Mom." Anne raised her head and looked at her son attentively. Inside her, there was a struggle between a mother who endlessly loves her only son and a woman whose place a beautiful young girl wants to take. In this struggle, love and jealousy had equal powers. "Hello, son. I need to talk to you." George sat down on a chair next to a large conference table. He didn't want to think about what had happened at their house. But the guy understood that he would have to talk about it. His mother is his own person, and they will have to compromise. "Let's talk," he agreed. "I guess I was wrong. I realized this during the day that you were not at home. I changed my mind a lot. You see, George, this is not the future I imagined for you." "And what did you imagine?" The guy interrupted his mother in anger. "Did you think that I would bring home the daughter of an oligarch, an airy dummy, for whom only trips to salons, spas, and endless shopping are important? Mom, you understand, I love Alien just because I love her, because she loves me. And she does it sincerely. If you want to know, I fell in love with her at first sight. We've been dating for 6 months now. Do you really think that if I had doubted her feelings for even a minute, I would have continued my relationship with her?" "Calm down, son, I believe you. That's exactly what I wanted to talk about." Anne tried to soften the tone of the conversation. "Sit down, tell me, are you serious about marrying an alien?" "Yes, Mom. I seriously intend to get married." "Well, in the end, I have to trust your choice. And in this case, I will soon have grandchildren, right?" "Well, we didn't think about it. Maybe they will." George was still offended by his mother, although he felt that she was ready for reconciliation. "Well, okay, I apologize to Alien. She will soon become a member of our family and my daughter-in-law. Let's apply and let her come to us on the weekend. Let's discuss the preparations for the wedding." George was confused. It wasn't like her mother to make peace so quickly. Anne has always had a strong character, was able to defend her opinion, and did not deviate from it. Otherwise, she would not have been successful in business. But on the other hand, he was glad that she had at least accepted his decision. "You really don't mind if we get married?" George asked incredulously. "Since you love Alien, I don't mind. The main thing for me is your happiness, son." She went up to George and hugged him. It was hard to accept that her son would have his own family, but otherwise she could lose her son. And Anne couldn't let that happen. "Thank you, Mom." George thanked me. "Only I will live with Alien, so we will come together on the weekend. But this condition does not suit me at all." The mother objected. "First of all, there are some rules of decency. The bride and groom do not live in the same apartment before the wedding. And secondly, you have your own house to which you take your young wife. In the meantime, live separately. That's what I insist on. Believe me, it's the right thing to do." There was a steely note in Anne's voice again. George thought for a moment, and then said, "You're probably right, Mom. That's settled. I'll be waiting for you at home tonight. In the meantime, go work." Walking down the corridor of the publishing house, George still could not believe that his mother had made concessions to him and was ready to accept Alien. He was already looking forward to telling her about everything tonight, and why wait for the evening? "Alien, do you have your passport with you?" George asked the girl, having reached her by phone. "Yes, what happened?" "We'll meet at the fountain in the center at lunchtime." "Agreed?" "Okay, what happened?" "You'll find out. I'll be waiting." George hung up the phone. He thought for a while, and then picked up the smartphone in his hand again and dialed the flower delivery service. He can't lead Alien to apply without a bouquet. 2 months later, George and Alien got married. The young people were happy. Anne was at a loss not to fall into the dirt in front of the guests, and she named more than 50 people. Most of the invited people are colleagues from the publishing house, business partners, and friends of the woman. But the young ones invited Jane and Alex, as well as several friends of George. The wedding was celebrated in a restaurant. Alien looked amazing in a snow-white dress, and George in a blue suit with buds of small white roses seemed very solemn and grown up. Looking at her son, Anne wiped away a tear from time to time. After the wedding, the young couple settled in the apartment of the groom of his mother. After long-term disputes, it was decided that while they would live together with Anne, it would be seen further the apartment is large. There is enough space for everyone. Alien tried to help Anne with the housework. She didn't know how to cook much. They didn't teach this at the orphanage, but I bought a book with recipes and cooked according to it. But her mother-in-law always praised her for her cleanliness. The daughter-in-law was really a very neat girl. She kept the whole apartment clean. Almost immediately after the wedding, the family began a tradition of dining together on Sundays. If on other days the young people could go to a restaurant or eat without waiting for their mother-in-law, then on Sunday from 17 everyone had to be at the table. She cooked mostly for Alien, but Anne often joined her if she was free. So one Sunday, the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law were cooking Sunday dinner together in the kitchen. George was not at home. He went out to the store. While Alien was chopping vegetables, her husband's mother was flipping through a magazine. Her sister-in-law asked her to move the pot. The woman abruptly stood up, picked up the pot, and then her eyes went dark. She fell to the floor, knocking over a 3-liter bowl of boiling broth. "Oh my God!" screamed Alien and rushed to her husband's mother. She was screaming loudly. Then the scream turned into a soft sob. The girl grabbed the phone and dialed the medics. When George approached the entrance, his mother was already being loaded into the car on a stretcher. Alien was crying nearby. "What's wrong? What's wrong with Mom?" "This is terrible." She dropped a pot of broth on herself. He was very hot. The guy shoved a package into his wife's hands. "Go home, I'll go with her," he said. She couldn't find a place for herself at home. She has already reproached herself 100 times for asking her mother-in-law to remove the saucepan from the stove because she could have done it herself. George returned late in the evening. "How's Mom?" Alien asked anxiously. "Severe burn, he will be in the hospital." The husband replied wearily. "How did this happen?" "I was chopping vegetables, and she was reading something in a magazine. I asked her to remove the saucepan from the heat, and she stood up and then swayed and fell. Maybe I was dizzy. It's my fault." "Come on, it's not your fault. My mother thinks I don't know anything, but her blood pressure has been jumping for a long time. Age doesn't make anyone healthier. Everything will be fine, don't worry." The patient was in the hospital for a whole month. George had to take over the duties of the director of the publishing house. Alien asked for a vacation at work and took care of her mother-in-law. She hardly left her side, stayed in the hospital room from morning to evening, fed her, helped her change clothes, talked to her, and read the manuscripts given to her by George. During this time, the daughter-in-law and mother-in-law became very close. After being discharged from the hospital, they came home as relatives. At dinner, Anne said in a serious tone, "That's it, my children. I've had time to think about everything. George, since you're doing a great job as director, so be it. Stay in the manager's chair, and I will rest. Mom, are you sure?" "Don't interrupt. I have another solution." His mother cut him off. "I bought a plot in the city a long time ago. It's time for us to get out of this 3-room den, which I hope will soon become too small for us. You're going to give me grandchildren, aren't you? So son, start building a house. I think we can do it in 2 or 3 years." What a surprise. Alien gasped in shock. "This is all very well, of course, but I would also like to discuss something with you." I turned to George's wife and mother. "I have some savings, and I thought my wife will stop working for her uncle, or rather for her aunt. She may have her own beauty salon, albeit a small one, but still her own. What do you think, Mom? Alien looked in surprise at her husband, then at her mother-in-law. Everything that was said at the table that evening was very unexpected for her. She could not imagine herself as the owner of the salon. That's a great idea, Anne smiled. Let her learn how to run a business, and you help her. I do not know what to say, the girl said happily. That's how much you need to do: find a room, buy equipment, recruit staff. You can handle everything. You're a smart girl. Well, that's nice, Anne said, looking at her happy son and daughter-in-law. As they say, there would be no happiness, but misfortune would help. 8 years have passed. The family has long since moved into a large 2-story house with its own plot. Anne set up a small flower garden, took care of plants, grew roses, asters, peonies. George ran a publishing house that flourished and brought in good income. Alien has turned into a real businesswoman. Everything was fine, but Alien still couldn't get pregnant. She and George went through a lot of examinations, but all in vain. She never told her husband about the termination of her pregnancy, which she had done many years ago. She didn't want him to know about that unpleasant event in her life. But in her heart, Alien blamed herself for not being able to give birth to her husband's son or daughter. Only the absence of children has overshadowed the life of this family. George was preparing to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the publishing house. It was announced to the staff that the corporate event would be held in the restaurant. Everyone is invited, as well as regular customers and partners. Everyone was in high spirits. George was giving the last assignment to Vera, who stood in front of him with a notebook, writing down everything he said. She still hadn't given up trying to win over the handsome director. George paused, looked her up and down critically. Her clothes were too provocative. Angela, did it ever occur to you to dress more decently for work? The man asked. Don't you like it? The girl was defiantly spinning around herself. In my opinion, it is very fashionable and stylish. In my opinion, it's just vulgar, the director interrupted her. The day before, George's mother again started talking about the fact that they could not give her grandchildren in any way, which brought Alien to tears. The man was already so tired of rushing between his mother and his wife, calming one or the other, that sometimes he did not even want to return home. Remembering his wife's tantrum yesterday, he sighed heavily. He also wanted a son, but he loved Alien no less than 8 years ago, and was not going to part with her just because there was no baby in their family. His mother indirectly insisted that George get a divorce, all the time repeating that the years were flying by, that she was getting old and would soon not be able to babysit her grandson if he ever did show up. Trying to banish sad thoughts from himself, George plunged into work. My wife refused to go to a corporate party on the occasion of the 15th anniversary of the publishing house, citing ill health. She cried all night again and fell asleep in the morning only thanks to the pills she took. He kissed his wife as usual and left the house. Alien watched sadly as her husband got into the car and drove out the gate. The woman felt that she had been in a terrible state for a long time. Even the 2 weeks at sea that they spent with her husband this summer could not completely rid her of this condition. She didn't want to go to a restaurant with her husband, have fun, and be happy when she felt so bad. Also, the mother-in-law constantly added fuel to the fire, whispered to her husband that it was necessary to leave a barren wife, and sometimes openly expressed her dissatisfaction, bringing Alien to tears. The marriage was bursting at the seams, and she didn't know what to do. The restaurant was fun and noisy. The guests were dancing. From time to time, a pause was announced, which was filled with congratulations and gifts. The publisher's birthday was a great success. Only George somehow got over it very quickly. He downed glass after glass, hardly eating, and by the end of the evening he was almost on his feet. Thank you all so much for the congratulations. I love you all, everyone, shouted the sweetest director. Such behavior by George Ilyich, whom the whole city knew, could cause irreparable damage to the reputation of the publishing house, but he did not care. At one point he even started dancing, which shocked some guests and made others have fun. Someone even took out a smartphone and started filming the inappropriate behavior of the director of the publishing house. Watching all this, Angela's secretary became more and more horrified. She knew her boss well. The next day he will bitterly regret what he did the day before. but now something had to be done to prevent the situation from going too far. So that George would not embarrass himself in front of his partners, who were already squinting at him, looking disapprovingly. "Let me dance with you." Angela grabbed the director by the waist, hugged him to her, and began to push him towards the exit. "Where are you taking me?" "I want to have fun," muttered George. "And now we will continue to have fun, only in the fresh air." Angela coaxed him, continuing to push him towards the exit. On the street, she caught the first taxi she saw and put the director there. She sat down next to him and gave the driver the address. "Where are we going, Angela?" George asked her. "To a secret place where no one will know how you fought today." "George Eliot," the secretary said affectionately. "Do we need to go there?" the director asked, trying to lift his head from Vera's lap. He seemed ready to go to sleep in the car. After paying off the taxi driver, Angela barely pulled the director out of the car and dragged him to her home. The girl lived in a hostel, but she had a good relationship with the janitor. So, after grumbling a little, the old woman let her pass with a man. In the room, Angela took the bottle of cognac she had started from the cabinet and poured it into glasses. "Okay, you need to shake things up a little," she said, holding up the man's card. After drinking a little, after a while George began to come to his senses. "Where am I?" he asked. "And you're in a secret place," Angela said affectionately, hugging and kissing him. "You'll be very happy here. You have no idea how good it's going to be for you." George did not understand well what he was doing, but he did not lose his masculine strength. Even despite the large amount of alcohol she drank, she achieved what she wanted. She finally dragged the director into her bed. In the morning, George had a terrible headache. He was horrified to find himself in a small room in an unfamiliar bed, with his secretary lying next to him. Still swaying slightly, he got out of bed, found his clothes, and began to get dressed. At home, George said that he had had too much, did not want to return home like this, and slept on the sofa in his office at the publishing house. "Go take a shower and go to rest." "You need to sleep it off," said Alien. "Ugh, how you stink. Why did you drink so much?" "Forgive me, my dear. I don't know what came over me." George's mother and wife tried not to remember this incident anymore, but Angela, at every opportunity, reminded the director of how good it was together. She continued to stick to him at work every day. George was stressed out by all this, but he felt guilty. He was angry at himself, not at Angela. One day, the secretary entered the office uninvited. She looked worried. "Is something wrong, Angela?" George asked. "It happened. I'm pregnant." Angela lowered her head. "From you." George got up from his desk, walked over to the secretary and looked into her eyes. "You're not lying. Is there no mistake?" "No. What should I do now?" Angela sobbed. "Calm down. And what should be done in this situation?" "At least to provide for me and the child, at most to get married. After all, this is your baby. So the second is excluded. I'll help you with the money. I still need a place to live. It's not like raising a kid in a dorm. I'll decide, go." The girl left the office, and George sat down in an armchair and dropped his head into his hands. He's going to have a long-awaited baby. His blood, not from my wife. And this is a fact that both pleased and worried the man at the same time. He very quickly came up with a place to comfortably accommodate Angela and her unborn child in Alina's apartment. It's empty anyway. George will say that he handed her over to an employee who has temporary difficulties. 2 more years have passed. That night, when Alien unexpectedly witnessed her husband's conversation with his mother, she could no longer sleep. She and George became more and more estranged from each other and no longer made any attempts to get closer. We lived as friends, as buddies, sometimes even as neighbors. Now, staying late at work, George did not even consider it necessary to explain the reason. Alien went to work in the salon as if on autopilot. And then such a shock. George has another family. Her husband has a child on the side. The baby she couldn't give birth to. In the morning, Alien drank coffee and went to the salon. Thoughts of the double life of her beloved husband did not leave her. She walked, hardly seeing anything in front of her. She was startled out of her state by the screeching of car tires right at the pedestrian crossing. A huge black Jeep hit a girl with a stroller. Alien rushed to the victim. At this time, the driver of the Jeep turned on the rear and disappeared from view in just a matter of seconds. Girl, are you alive?" Alien bent over the young mother lying on the asphalt. A crowd had already begun to gather. A pool of blood was slowly developing on the asphalt next to the victim's head. Hearing the baby crying, Alien rushed to pick up the overturned stroller. The boy in the blue suit was crying. The woman unhooked the restraining straps on the stroller and grabbed the child in her arms. "Hush, hush, little one," she whispered to the baby. "It's okay. It's all over now. Don't cry." She rocked the boy, hugging him to her. At that time, the ambulance sirens were heard. People stumbled, giving doctors access to the girl lying on the asphalt. The victim was put on a stretcher and loaded into a car. Almost simultaneously, the police arrived with the ambulance. "Is she alive?" The uniformed officer asked the doctor. "So far, yes, but I'm afraid it won't take," said the doctor. "Here, there was a phone next to her. Okay, give it to me. I need to call my relatives." "Are there any witnesses?" A policeman shouted into the crowd. "I'm a witness," said Alien, continuing to rock the baby in her arms. The policeman looked closely at the frightened woman with the child. "I had to decide something. Call my relatives. In the meantime, what should I do with it?" "Let this woman babysit him." "Get in the car," the employee said, and he began to look through the contacts in the victim's smartphone and call the numbers that he thought belonged to the closest people. On the way to the hospital, the baby calmed down and fell asleep. Carefully carrying him in her arms, Alien entered the emergency room and sat down on a chair. "Wait here, my father will arrive now." "I got through," the policeman told the woman. "What about the boy's mom?" the alien asked. "She's being operated on. Nothing is known yet. We will wait. The employee left, leaving Alien alone with the baby in her arms. She stared at the baby's face and couldn't take her eyes off it. He looked about a year old. Maybe more, maybe less. Alien didn't understand this. He smacked his lips pathetically in his sleep, sometimes smiling slightly at something. The woman's heart was bleeding. She did not notice how the door to the room opened, and an agitated man ran into the room. Alien raised her head and saw George in front of her. The husband was struggling to cope with excitement, breathing heavily. "What are you doing here?" George asked, not understanding why his wife was holding his son in her arms. "And you?" Alien was even more surprised. "I got a call. They told me that Angela was in an accident with a child." "Which Angela?" "Meh." Alien didn't understand anything at all. George took a deep breath and sat down next to his wife. He looked at his son, stroked his head. "This is my son, Eric," the man said softly. "A son?" "Oh." She understood everything, but for some reason she didn't feel any emotions at all. "Yes, it happened that way. He's very handsome. He looks like you," Alien smiled. George looked in surprise at his wife, who was admiring his child born to another woman. The wife did not throw a tantrum, did not ask questions. She was hugging his son to her chest, and he was sleeping peacefully, smiling at something in his sleep. "I'll explain everything to you. I wanted to say something to George." "Don't. The main thing is that he is alive. The main thing is that the baby was not injured." Alien put her finger to her lips. The figure of a doctor appeared at the end of the corridor. "I'm really sorry. We did everything we could. She died. Be strong." The doctor turned around and left. Alien and George were silent. The baby in the woman's arms stirred, waking up, as if he felt that his mother was no more. Alien was the first to speak. "What a horror. What's going to happen now?" she said, not looking at her husband. "I don't know. She doesn't even have any relatives. She was a visitor, it seems," George said. Alien stood up resolutely. The only right plan matured in her head. The city cemetery was quiet. Autumn leaves flew off the trees, laying down on the paths, granite slabs of tombstones and graves. A small group of people saw off Angela on her last journey. There were red flowers on her grave. Angela loved everything bright and catchy, even if there are red roses on her grave, George said. Among those who saw Angela off on her last journey were colleagues. Dressed in black clothes, they looked sadly at the photo of a beautiful young woman who just a year ago became the mother of a beautiful baby. The colleagues were talking quietly. No one could accept until now that a cheerful, never discouraged, very energetic woman died under the wheels of a reckless driver who did not even consider it necessary to call an ambulance and provide first aid. George and Alien were standing at the grave. They were silent. The terrible tragedy made them close, dear people again. George took his wife's hand and stroked her palm. He did not doubt for a minute that everything in their lives would be fine. The husband and wife stood for a while longer and slowly walked along the cemetery alley towards the gate. There, outside the gate, Anne was strolling leisurely, pushing a stroller in front of her with her little grandson Eric. Ashley was always called Sunshine. From the moment she was born, the little girl seemed to light up everything around her. When she was brought from the hospital, put on the table and unwrapped diapers, the many neighbors who had gathered for the event in their house, amicably aghast. Unexpectedly, they laughed. The baby, lying in front of them and amusingly moving freed arms and legs, as if glowing. The baby's light skin was covered with light, barely visible freckles, making her less white. "Oh, what if it's a disease?" Olivia, the girl's mother, exclaimed hysterically. "It's a rash, probably. How could they let you out of the hospital with such a disease?" "Olivia, stop screaming, you'll scare the child." The woman was shouted down firmly by the stately Emily, a mother of 5. Because of this, she was considered infallible in matters of health and education. "It's not a rash." She scrutinized the baby. "They're freckles. Your little redhead's like a dandelion." Emily was restrained in her emotions, but she smiled involuntarily, and the others smiled after her. The little girl, 5 days old, felt everyone's delight. Her eyes rounded, and her funny, wrinkled nose, as only babies can do, sneezed. On the top of her head, a strand of bright red hair tangled amusingly. On her temples and the back of her head, golden locks curled into amusing curls. Golden eyebrows and eyelashes completed the picture. "Well, just a sunshine," someone whispered admiringly. "A sunny little girl." But only she got a bad mother, came a low voice from behind. A short, thin woman of about 50 strode resolutely through the crowd. Her thin hands, calloused from hard labor, deftly grabbed the little girl. "You're all whispering and grumbling," she said. "Come on, get out of here. There's nothing to frighten the child or jinx it." "Come on," Barbara Emily said conciliatingly. The others admired the baby in silence, only sighing occasionally. "It's worth it to see such a miracle. We seldom have anything that isn't dark as coal. And here is such a sunshine," laughed the other one quietly. "That's just it," Barbara said angrily, shooing her neighbors away from the table. "Go home, all of you, or I'll take a broom, and I'll spare your gray heads." Knowing her decisive temper and the fact that she was not used to throwing words around, the women started to leave. Barbara locked the door and turned to the mother of the little girl, who had been sitting in silence all this time. "Well, daughter, tell me, how are we going to live from now on?" She shrugged her shoulders. "As we lived before, so we will continue to live." "No," the mother replied resolutely. "You have a child now. You will not live as before." "You don't tell me how to live," replied the daughter angrily. "Can you do it without me?" Barbara hesitated. "There's your showdown lying there, waving its arms and legs." She waved her hand in the direction of the little girl, who was concentrating on her fingers. At the sight of the girl, her mother's angry, tense face instantly relaxed and blossomed. The deep wrinkles turned into rays that scattered to the sides. She approached the little girl and gently touched her tiny hands. The girl immediately grasped her grandmother's finger tightly. Barbara laughed softly and leaned toward her granddaughter, scrutinizing her. Her eyes lit up with tenderness. And she is a sunshine, she said with a soft smile. Our golden daughter. A redhead like her father, she said sharply. You can't find a golden one. These words brought Barbara back to reality. Barbara looked sharply at her daughter. Her face was hard and stern again, and her gaze was testing and distrustful. I'm not going to discuss your affairs. It's none of my business. But you brought your child into my home, and it's my granddaughter, she emphasized the last two words. Olivia, your daughter is your life now. And how are you going to live it? It's our business. It's mine too. So don't you dare talk to me like that. This is my home for now, and I own it. I knew it, Olivia said, gloatingly. I know that you'd reproach me for being your keeper. Barbara looked at Olivia regretfully and waved her hand tiredly. Come to the child, mother, she said. Why should I go near her? Her daughter shrugged her shoulder. She's not crying. So everything is normal. And so it turned out that all the care of the baby fell on the shoulders and hands of 55-year-old Barbara. Barbara was a very famous and notable person in the big noisy village. The girl is short and thin. Nevertheless, she never got lost in the crowd of her peers. Her large brown eyes, thick blonde braid, and cheerful, never dull character made up for her lack of height and stature. She was beautiful with a special, calm, sweet beauty, and modestly dressed, always busy with an inordinate number of younger brothers and sisters, always freckled in bunches. Barbara never had a shortage of suitors. After graduating from teacher training institutes, Barbara returned to her native village and began working as a math teacher in the only school. A few years later, Barbara, who by then had blossomed into a lush, truly feminine beauty, to everyone's amazement and indignation, married a stranger. A stranger, as they called him in the village. Alex came from the city to work as a technician at a large livestock complex, and according to the village critics, other than a diploma in his profession, there was nothing outstanding about him. Barbara and Alex loved each other very much. It was obvious to the naked eye, and their love was something unusual for these places, not country. Alex gave his wife bouquets of flowers, carried her bags from stores, and carried her through puddles on his hands, which made men indignant, and women in a timid awe. Barbara wasted her hands washing his shirts by hand and rushing home from school in time to prepare a delicious dinner. Crazy people. What can you take from them? Waved at them and left the young family in peace. A year later, they had a daughter who was named Olivia. And when the girl was 7 years old, Alex was not. He died horribly and ridiculously. On a winter's evening, he was working late. His car froze. Waiting for a hitchhiker was hopeless, and Alex, without warning anyone, decided to walk home. 3 kilometers, separating the complex from the village, did not seem to him a great distance, but in an hour he would see his beloved wife and daughter. The night was not only frosty but also overcast, and Alex, a city man, quickly lost his way and went in a completely different direction. In general, Alex froze in the field, and the thick snow covered all his tracks. They searched for him for several days, when no one but Barbara had any hope. She believed to the last, believed in a miracle. But it wasn't until spring, when Alex's body was found, that she calmed down. After burying Alex, Barbara became a different person. It seemed that together with her husband, she put in the coffin of her joy, cheer, and laughter. She became withdrawn and taciturn, shutting herself away. The only place where one could see the old Barbara was at school. With children, she remained kind, patient, and fair. About new relationships after Alex's death, Barbara did not even think about. Local men tried to get close to her, to befriend her, to court her, and even, according to village tradition, to openly woo her. Barbara for many years remained a beautiful young woman with a straight back, a swift gait. But to all attempts to marry her, she answered with a firm refusal. She kicked matchmakers out of the house and sent suitors away. So she lived alone with her daughter Olivia, without asking for help, without complaining about fate. No one saw her tears. Gradually, everyone got used to the fact that she was a lonely, independent, and adamant woman, the eternal widow of her Alex. Olivia was growing up, different from the cheerful and smiling Barbara they remembered her as. It was probably Barbara's fault in many ways that Olivia grew up withdrawn and too serious for a girl. Her seriousness was sullen and directed at people rather than her studies. Almost never did Olivia smile, and no one could hear her laugh. At school, she had a reputation as a savage and a damsel with oddities. Her mother, even though they had no one else, was indifferent to her, showing little affection. There was no intimacy between them, the usual intimacy between a mother and her only daughter. Olivia had always kept a distance between herself and Barbara, and no one, including Barbara herself, was surprised that when she'd barely graduated from high school, Olivia had gone to the city without any special plans. All those years while Olivia was growing up, Barbara had been tormented with guilt toward her daughter. She realized that she didn't like Olivia, didn't give her warmth and tenderness, that all that care about Olivia, delicious food and beautiful clothes. Checking her lessons, it was all very important, of course, but it wasn't the main thing in the relationship between a daughter and her mother. What was the issue here? Was it that her feelings had died with Alex and she'd never been able to rekindle them for her daughter's sake? Or was it that Olivia was growing up too independent and didn't seem to need her mother at all? It probably didn't matter anymore. "Olivia, I have a favor to ask of you." Barbara finally made up her mind and began a very difficult conversation with her daughter before she left home. I'm sorry to you," she said, and stopped talking when she looked up and saw the ironic look in Olivia's eyes. "What is it, Mom?" she said with a chuckle. "Let's not do that. Thank God you haven't bullied me all these years or burdened me with errands. And now let's do without playing mother-daughter. Well, what did you want to say?" She continued to look at the confused mother with a grin. "Behave, study. Try not to get knocked up by the first guy you meet. I don't think I missed anything. Oh yes, and most importantly, my dear daughter. I love you very much and I'm always here for you, no matter what happens." So Barbara, having listened to her daughter's tirade, closed her eyes and took a breath. "Well, I guess I deserve it," she said quietly and humbly. "I love you very much, and I am always ready to help you in any way I can." She added, almost in a whisper, "no matter what happens." Olivia went to the city and rarely heard from him. She enrolled in a trade school, and after graduation she found a job with a trading firm. She did not stay long in the city, however, and returned home. Barbara was immensely happy about the return of her daughter, her hedgehog, as she called Olivia to herself. But the hedgehog had become even more prickly in the 4 years she had been away from her mother. "But Mom, what's there to tell?" She finally answered her mother's questions. "My city life didn't work out. Not everyone has to walk on asphalt in heels. Some people need to knead manure with their elbows." Olivia, of course, strongly exaggerated, so disparagingly talking about her small homeland, a village on the outskirts of which a huge cattle breeding complex was constantly growing and expanding. Due to this, in terms of living standards, livability, and size, it had long been not inferior to a small town. For some reason, Olivia was even a little offended by Barbara, who sincerely loved the place where she had lived almost all her life. "It's nice here," Barbara said. "We don't even have that manure lying around the barns. And there is a lot of work, including in your specialty. And we recently got gas, and they built a movie theater. Yes, and birch trees, a river, and so on. We have everything." Olivia ended the conversation decisively. They were back to being mother and daughter. Barbara continued to work at her school, graduating new generations of students. Olivia, an accountant by training, went to work at the cattle farm. But work, like everything else in her life, did not interest her. She remained unsociable. In their house for a long time settled silence and despondency. And then, a few years later, Olivia suddenly changed. She began to stare at her reflection in the mirror for long periods of time, something she had never done before. And she didn't like what she saw. Mom, Olivia suddenly came out of her room one evening and spoke to her mother. "Maybe I should get a haircut. What do you think?" Barbara dropped the TV remote in surprise. Not only was it unexpected that Olivia would ask her to do something like that, but it was also a question of appearance. Olivia had little interest in how she looked. Barbara looked at her daughter, whose hair, long unwashed and overgrown, was twisted at the back of her head in a sloppy bun. "And a daughter," Barbara said with her hands. Of course, that would be wonderful. She struggled to keep from asking why her daughter was paying attention to her appearance. The reason, however, soon became clear. "Andrew's mom works at the mill," Olivia said. "And, we've decided to get married. He doesn't have a place to live with me, of course." She was silent, waiting for her mother's reaction. Barbara sat down on the edge of her chair and tried to cope with the shock of her daughter's categorical statements. "But why didn't you say so in the first place?" she asked. "If that's what you've decided, it's just that it's all so sudden." "Why unexpected?" Smirked ironically at her daughter. Don't forget, I'm almost 30 years old. How is that unexpected? I mean, I've never even met your man. I don't even know his name, Barbara said, a little pathetically. What's there to see? He's just a man, an ordinary man. And his name was Andrew. Wait, Olivia. Barbara raised her hand and pressed it to her cheek, looking at her daughter fearfully. Are you pregnant by any chance? Well, yes, I am, Olivia hummed. After spending the night without sleep, Barbara got up, determined. Well, Olivia, if that's the way it's going to be, bring your chosen one. Well, will you bear me a grandson or granddaughter? And we'll live again as a big, friendly, normal family, she said, emphasizing the word normal. However, a normal, and even more so a friendly family did not happen again. It wasn't in Andrew's plans to start a family or to have a child. He was not a local and came to the mill for seasonal work, for which there was a shortage of laborers. The soft-spoken, uncommunicative, aloof Andrew and Olivia, who was a stranger to the place, was the bookkeeper. She was perfect for a casual, easy relationship. Especially since, for all her unsociability and unsociability, Olivia was not spoiled by male attention. Quite handsome, tall, broad-shouldered, with curly hair and a charming smile, Andrew was certainly attractive. A few simple compliments and signs of attention were enough for Olivia to give in to his advances. After realizing she was pregnant, Olivia decided that here was her chance to finally be a normal woman. In her position, all mothers are. For some reason, she was hesitant to tell Andrew about her situation. Meanwhile, Andrew's contract with the mill was coming to an end, and it was time for him to leave. When Olivia told him she was pregnant, 4 months pregnant, Andrew became angry. "What are you, an idiot?" he exploded. "What family? What baby? Don't you know what you should have done if you turned out to be so stupid? Look at yourself in the mirror, bride," he shouted angrily. "I've got 2 like you at every station." "No," he corrected himself. "There are no more like you. The rest of them are prettier somehow. But did you imagine I'd stay here with you and those cockroaches? No, you're really crazy." And so Olivia's slim hope for happiness was shattered. "Olivia, where is your boyfriend?" Barbara asked timidly a few weeks after her memorable conversation with her daughter. Olivia was back to her way of life. She sat unkempt, wearing an old tracksuit and biting her fingernail. The only thing new about her appearance was her belly, which was already quite noticeable. Olivia always wore loose uniforms, though, and no one but her mother knew about her situation. "Fiancé?" She grinned back. "The hell he knows, he's gone to look for another bride." "What do you mean?" Barbara sat down. It seemed to her that she was ready for everything, and her daughter couldn't surprise her. But as it turned out, she was wrong. The new news had hit her like a snowball. "Olivia, how could it be?" Yes, just like that, Olivia jumped up from the chair she'd just been sitting in, leaning against the wall. "Don't start lecturing me, okay? I'm sick of it." "What are you gonna do?" What? Get rid of it? I don't know how. They say it's a long time coming." "What are you talking about?" Barbara, too, got up impulsively and paced the room excitedly. "How can you get rid of your child, my daughter? It's a sin." She made a firm gesture to stop Olivia, who was obviously going to object, and her daughter, surprised by her mother's excitement, remained silent for some reason. "Have the baby," Barbara said heartily, but firmly. And as if stamping her decision, she even banged her fist on the table. We'll raise her. If you don't want to have a baby for yourself, at least have one for me, girl," she added quietly. Olivia shrugged and left the room. 5 months later, a girl was born with bright red hair and wonderful doll-like eyes. The eyes were an amazing gray-blue color. And this color was determined in the baby literally from the first days, and did not change anymore. "What shall we call her?" Barbara asked her daughter. Olivia shrugged. "Ashley." Barbara chanted one of her favorite names. "Ashley it is," Olivia agreed indifferently. The women in the village were treated differently by their strange, atypical family of 3 generations. Some shrugged indifferently, others with obvious incomprehension, but most were sympathetic. Everyone knew Barbara from childhood, remembered how tragically her family life successfully started, how absurd her relationship with her only daughter turned out to be. Missed Olivia because of her grief. The townspeople sighed and smiled involuntarily. But Ashley, it seems, was given to Barbara as a reward. The townspeople added in conversation among themselves. Barbara blossomed again. With the birth of her granddaughter, she, as if she had been mothballed for years, opened up again, studied, learned to smile. Olivia, seeing how her mother had completely dissolved into Ashley, was visibly relieved that she had completely shifted the care of the girl to her, and as if she had forgotten about her daughter. And so it turned out that at the age of 2, Ashley's real mom became her grandmother. "Don't you dare reproach me." Olivia cut her mother off when she tried to talk about Ashley needing a mom. "You weren't the perfect mom yourself, and that's okay. I grew up, and Ashley will grow up just as well as anyone else." Ashley didn't just grow up to be perfect. The girl was some kind of amazing creature. Clear eyes with a round face and a face thickly studded with golden short fuzz. She seemed to be smiling all the time. Even if the girl's lips were compressed, their corners were still raised, and the feeling of a quiet and sly smile did not leave the one who looked at her face. But if the little girl laughed with her shining white teeth, it was impossible not to smile back. The girl grew really pretty, a little snub nose, gray-blue eyes, plump lips, very light, as most redheads' skin. All this promised that the girl would grow up, if not beautiful, then certainly very pretty. But the main adornment of the girl was her hair, not flashy but bright. The red color of her hair was as if slightly accentuated by a light, strong shade. At the same time, the hair glistened and shimmered, as if there were elusive lights running through it. Like many children, her hair was tangled, and when it was time to cut her hair, Barbara looked at her granddaughter and sighed as she put the scissors aside, unable to do the deed. "Well, I cannot," she confessed to her neighbor. "Can you imagine? I can't lift my hand, I can't even cry. It's funny and sinful. You won't believe it. I sit and cry. And I realize that this hair is getting in the way, tangled in it. And I still can't pull myself together." In accordance with the hair, Ashley's character was also, as they say, golden. The girl was very active and mobile, liked to invent mischievous adventures, but at the same time was obedient and manageable. In her, there was not a hint of closeness and sullenness, which from childhood distinguished her mother. Ashley was a mocking and cheerful girl, ringing with silvery laughter every chance she got. What a sparkler, said the kindergarten teacher, where Barbara gave Ashley to when she was 2.5 years old. She herself continued to work at the school. Ashley grew from an adorable baby to an equally adorable girl. Her good fortune had passed all the skin problems and torment that spoiled the lives of so many teenagers. Her loosely curly hair remained her jewelry. At 13 to 14 years on Ashley, as she, not particularly wise, called in school, slowly looked at most of the boys' peers. True, in adolescence, sympathy is sometimes expressed in a very strange way. On a fall afternoon, Ashley, a sixth grader on the second shift, was carefully carrying a model of a building in her outstretched arms. It was the fruit of days of painstaking work in the evenings. Ashley had assembled it out of paper, matches, paper clips, and more, always thinking of new things to add. "Well, Ashley," she spun around. Barbara laughed. "What's that you've got there?" "This, Grandma, is the house of the future," proudly declared the girl. "And, well, if the future, then of course," said the grandmother respectfully, looking at the tiered construction of the parts, which were fastened in some intricate way. Finally, the intricate layout was ready, and so Ashley, carefully wrapping her precious pyramid around her arms, carefully but quickly stepped towards the school. "Hey, redhead," she heard behind her. "Ashley, why can't you hear me? I'm asking you." The girl stopped and, carefully afraid of dropping her precious cargo, looked back. She did. Standing behind her, smirking, was Justin, a boy from her class. A pretty obnoxious kid. Loved bullying, unless it was guaranteed to be seen by an adult. Justin and Ashley had run into this boy on various occasions, mostly trying to stop another boy's antics. Behind him, the faces of two more of Justin's boyfriends could be seen. Ashley sighed. Justin was a coward, and in another situation Ashley would have no trouble dealing with him, as she had done so many times. But right now she couldn't risk it. She needed to get her layout to school, which she was pretty sure she would win the school competition with. After all, she began in a very calm voice and a friendly smile. "Stay out of this. Please, I don't have time." No time for her. "Look, what's that you've got there?" "Guys, let's go see what she's dragging around." Ashley, in a last-ditch effort to protect her man-made marvel, turned her back to them and put her elbows out. But it didn't help her, of course. Justin shoved Ashley hard in the back, and one of the accomplices slapped his arms. The layout swayed, and as if sadly nodded one last time to its creator, and collapsed into the fall mud. Tears of indignation instantly filled Ashley's eyes and spurted from them. But she didn't smear them on her face. Ashley lunged at her abusers and grabbed the sleeve of her main abuser, Justin. Of course he would be in trouble, but there were 3 boys. There was no telling how the story would have ended for Ashley if there hadn't been a loud shout over their heads. "Come on, kids." They froze. At that, 2 of the boys were grabbed by the collars like kittens by the scruff of their necks. Justin, who was held only by Ashley, looked up and, instantly recognizing the situation, yanked his sleeve from Ashley's fingers and sprinted down the alley as fast as he could. His buddies, suddenly feeling free, followed. "If I see you again, I'll have you on crutches," came their way. Ashley stared at her masterpiece of future architecture. It had fallen apart from the impact with the ground, and the fall mud had already soaked the paper parts and turned them into mush. The girl squatted down and, sighing bitterly, began to collect the remains of the model. Tears rolled out of her eyes and hung ridiculously on her nose. Out of frustration, or rather grief, which was the biggest one so far in her short life. She didn't even immediately remember her unexpected savior. She looked up and met his eyes with a look quite grown up. Standing in front of her was a boy with shaggy blonde hair and a very serious face for a 15-year-old boy. Of course, Ashley knew this boy, as the whole school knew him. His name was Christopher. He was in 9th grade and was the school's celebrity. Almost straight A student, captain of the school basketball team. He was the best at computers, already knew how to drive a car, owned a huge German Shepherd, and generally had such an unimaginable set of cool qualities that he seemed like a Superman against the background of his peers, and even those who were older than him. Among other things, Christopher was very handsome, and sports made his figure strong and broad-shouldered, and taut beyond his years. And here was this almost superhuman man now standing over Ashley and looking at her distress. At last he came up and bent to the ground with evident interest. "What have you got there?" he asked. "It's a model of a building of the future." "Well, you know, we have a contest for 6th graders. Well, I wanted to participate so badly. I spent almost a month making it." She was surprised by the guy's interest in the model. "By yourself?" he questioned with disbelief. "By myself, really?" Ashley widened her eyes even more, making them look huge. "Well, my grandmother helped me. 2 roses, but not much. Don't worry, I did most of it myself." "That's great," Christopher said, suddenly delighted. Ashley suddenly remembered her misfortune and tears came to her eyes again. She angrily wiped her face and finally remembered what was important. "Oh, I didn't thank you for driving them away. Help me out. Except it's too late." "Nothing's too late," he declared. "Look at that, 3 pieces almost unharmed." Christopher spoke, carefully shifting the parts onto dry leaves. "This one here, I don't know what you've got. You'll have to completely redo them, of course, but you remember how you glued them together. And these 2 things here, but it's just a matter of replacing a few things. No problem at all." And Christopher suddenly smiled at the girl. "Thanks," Ashley said, confused. "Except I probably won't make it in time anyway. The competition is the day after tomorrow." "You'll make it if you want to," said the savior emphatically. "Your name is Ashley. I believe you're Barbara's granddaughter, right?" Ashley nodded, looking at Christopher mesmerized. "Look, let's put it this way." He thought for a while. "I don't have practice tonight. I'll come over tonight, if that's okay, and help you out a little. Just help me glue and cut. That doesn't count. The idea is yours." "Can you do that?" Really, Ashley, unable to believe her ears, continued to stare at Christopher with all eyes. "What a pair of eyes you have," the boy suddenly uttered. "All right, Carrot Top. See you later." Christopher was not deceived, and indeed he came to their house in the evening. Christopher Book and Barbara looked at him in surprise. "Hello, Barbara," the boy replied, embarrassed. "And I'm here to see your Ashley." Barbara looked at him in amazement. "Wow." About the meetings, Olivia's voice came from the back of the room. "It's a little early, daughter," Olivia began. "Sheesh," Barbara shouted sharply and turned to the boy and smiled welcomingly. "Come in, please, Christopher." "You've come," Ashley shouted happily, finding herself on the threshold of the room. "Then I'll definitely make it in time." "But I promise," Christopher said solidly. After working together for 3 hours, the layout was even better. And the next day, Christopher, who lived nearby, carried it to school himself, just in case. Ashley won first place in the contest, and Christopher suddenly realized that he was very pleased to help the brave redhead with the extraordinary clear and pure eyes. A couple of days after their chance encounter, Christopher, for some reason I don't know why, looked into the wing of the school where the little ones were studying. By high school girl standards, he saw Ashley immediately among the other 6th graders. Her red hair and 2 pigtails made her stand out in a big way. It was like she was glowing with some kind of joyful light and illuminating everything around her. At least on a rather cloudy day, it seemed to get brighter around the thin girl, as if an invisible ray of sunlight was coming from her herself. Ashley, the boy, called out softly, quite unexpectedly. "Oh," Ashley exclaimed, running up to him and hesitantly stopping a few paces away. "Christopher, hello. I'm so glad to see you. How are you doing? Did you win the contest?" In a slightly muffled voice, he asked. He suddenly felt embarrassed. For some reason, Christopher Foken, a high school student, one of the informal leaders of the school, had stuck up for the kids and was standing like a fool in front of a funny red-haired girl. "Yeah, she won. First place." Can you believe it? She smiled wide across her mouth, and her toothy grin suddenly made it even brighter. "Bloody hell," Christopher said angrily to himself. He wasn't quite sure what was happening to him or why he liked looking at Ashley so much. "Well, good for you." "Okay, come on," he struggled to find the words. He had never gotten lost in front of teachers or peers before. Christopher turned and took a determined step to the side, but stopped suddenly, turned again to the girl, who continued to stand and smile enthusiastically, and added, "If you have any problems, ask me." At the same time, he cast a very expressive glance in the direction of the group of boys, led by Justin, whose eyes were as rounded as possible. The news that the red-headed Ashley and the 6th grader were now under Christopher's personal protection spread quickly through the school and reached the ears of even the most uncomprehending. Anyway, immediately Justin quickly realized that it was no longer safe to bully a classmate. There certainly couldn't be any friendship between a 6th grader and a 9th grader like Christopher. But he treated Ashley like the little sister he never had, and she accepted his unobtrusive patronage with delight and pride. They met periodically at school or on the street. Ashley invariably repaid the favor with a cheerful smile. Christopher just couldn't help but smile back. For some reason, the sight of Ashley's red head always lifted Christopher's spirits. And all the things he had planned for the day worked out just fine. He had come to regard the girl as his personal talisman. It got to the point that when he didn't see Ashley at school before his final essay, he ran to her house with 2 red, ruddy apples as a distraction. After graduating from high school, Christopher, after serving in the army, went to the city to attend technical school. After receiving his diploma, he tried to live and work in the city. But local life was not for him. He was always drawn back home, to his native village, to his mother, friends, loved ones, streets and river banks familiar to the smallest details, old and explored by him from top to bottom and from bottom to top trees, and something else that he could neither understand nor formulate. 3 years later, in the spring, he returned home. Christopher walked down the street, breathing in the fresh air filled with the smells of cherry blossoms and lilacs. He listened to the birds singing and felt idiotically, inexplicably happy. The wicket slammed ahead. It was Barbara's house. A slim, girlish figure dressed in skinny jeans and a plaid shirt with the sleeves rolled up to the elbows easily jumped out of the gate. With her back to Christopher, she raised her arms, yanked the hairband from her hair, and her shiny red hair cascaded down her back, backlit by the bright spring sun. It was as if they were creating a glow around the girl. Christopher stopped, utterly amazed. The girl closed the wicket and turned to face him. Her face showed a look of surprise mixed with joy. Her eyebrows crept upward, and he was finally blinded. She flashed him a wide smile. "Ashley, you're here," Christopher exclaimed happily, not believing his eyes. "How have you changed?" "I've grown," she laughed, running up to him. "How do you do?" She held out her narrow palm to him, and he shook it with a kind of awe. The girl seemed to him extraordinary, incredible. More importantly, he realized why he'd missed her all these years. The red-haired Ashley, his mentee, who had grown into a hot bird. "Christopher, can you even hear me?" He finally heard Ashley laugh. She'd been saying something to him for a couple minutes, and he'd been standing in the middle of the street, staring at her and not reacting. "What's wrong with me?" He finally came to his senses. I said, "How long are you staying? Is your mom coming to visit on vacation?" No, Ashley, I'm not visiting. I'm home for good." He finally decided to look her in the eye. "What color are they, blue-gray?" "I don't know." In the bright sunlight, they were almost a heavenly blue, but there's a strand of hair on her forehead, and in the shadows it looks pearly gray. "That's great," Ashley exclaimed. "Oh, listen, you should come to our prom." "So what if you're older?" "Everyone knows you and remembers you. Do you know how happy everyone would be to see you? Do you?" He didn't know why he said that. "Would you personally be happy to see me?" "Yes," Ashley answered easily and without a second thought. "I'd be very happy." After the prom, which he'd gone to with half the town, he'd suddenly realized that he loved Ashley with a deep, bright, almost sacred love, and maybe he'd loved her all these years without realizing it, without even remembering that she existed. He simply didn't need anyone else but her. Her eyes, her face densely studded with freckles, and her hair flying with flames. "I love you," he told her a week later. "I'll wait for you as long as I have to, if you want to," he added quietly. "Very much I want to," he heard also a very quiet answer. The fact that something important and special was going on between Christopher and Ashley, who had returned home, became clear to everyone very quickly. Potential suitors quickly fell away from Ashley, and Christopher was sadly crossed off the list of the town's first suitors. All they saw was each other. "How could it be?" she said to Christopher. "You've just come back. Things have gotten so wonderful, and you have to break up again." They sat on a bench above the river cliff. He had his arm around her shoulders, and it felt so good. They both wanted it to last forever. Ashley was about to move on to graduate school, and she was anxious about leaving him. "Go," he said firmly, pulling her tighter against him as if he were contradicting his own words, not really wanting to let her go. "Go as you wish, study, and I will visit you often as I can, and you'll come to see me. Well, I mean to your mother, your grandmother, and me." He looked into Ashley's eyes. "I told you," he went on, silently, as if thinking about what he'd said. "I'll wait for you. And then, Ashley, I have to earn you. You'll be studying, and I'll be working and fixing up my mother's house. I can't just fall on Barbara's head with a young wife." He slid off the bench and knelt down in front of Ashley. Looking into her eyes, he noticed her cheeks flushed, emphasizing all her freckles. "With his wife," she whispered. Of course, he took her chin gently and lifted Ashley's face to a low slump. "You'll marry me, won't you?" She nodded. A tear rolled down her cheek. Ashley left to go to school for economics, and Christopher got serious about developing and renovating his parents' old house. They saw each other as often as possible. With each meeting, they were convinced that their feelings were only growing stronger. 3 years passed. Ashley got her degree and moved back home. The moment had finally arrived when she and Christopher could be together truly as man and woman, as husband and wife. Her whole being yearned for it. She wanted it with every fiber of her being, thought about it constantly. And it made it all the harder to hear the news she'd gotten at home. Ashley. Christopher began a conversation for which he had obviously been preparing for a long time. "My girl," he cleared his throat and shook his head stubbornly, continuing in a firm voice, "we need to wait a little longer." "What?" Ashley asked, confused. "Wait for what?" "Well, to get married," Christopher answered confusedly. "You know, Ashley, I'm sorry, I should have consulted you, of course, but it all happened so fast, before I knew it. But Ashley, it's only for a year. And it's money I won't make here in 5 years. You and I are going to make such a living off of it." He kept saying something. She continued to stare at him incomprehensibly, realizing only one thing: he would not marry her. And they were going somewhere apart again. How much longer? She let out something like a sob. "I can't wait any longer. I don't want to." She wrenched her hands from his, jumped up and pushed him with her foot. "Ashley, sweetheart, love," he mumbled, wrapping his arms around Ashley. "I can't and don't want to wait any longer either, but let's just wait a little longer. Please, my love." He hugged her, whispering some words in her ear. All their longing for each other spoke so powerfully that everything was forgotten: the voice of reason, calculations, promises, and propriety. There were only 2 people left in the world, he and she. And they were together. Christopher signed a 1-year contract to serve in the army. He was a fit, healthy, athletic guy, and he was willingly accepted into one of the units that carried out combat missions in a distant African country. Ashley, of course, did not know all the details of the contract, the main thing, the degree of danger to his life. Giving in to persuasion, and most importantly, being somewhere between heaven and earth, after all that finally happened between them, she, of course, agreed to everything. Ashley stayed waiting for Christopher, and 3 months after he left, she realized she was pregnant. Another month later, Christopher came home early. He came back in a zinc coffin. At Christopher's funeral, Ashley, pale and frightened by dizziness, fainted. She woke up at home on her bed with a wet handkerchief on her forehead. Barbara was sitting a little farther away, scrutinizing her granddaughter's face. "How are you?" she asked what seemed to Ashley to be the most stupid and pointless question. Ashley tried to turn away from the wall. "Don't turn away from me, Ashley," she said firmly. "Let's talk." This is, of course, unimaginable grief. "Christopher." Her voice trailed off and she quickly wiped her eyes. "Christopher is such a wonderful young best boy we've ever had. Ridiculous, terribly bitter, but he's a man. And he chose his own path. And that path led him to his death. You must realize that and accept it. And go on your way without Christopher. He's gone." "No," Ashley, she stood up resolutely and tried to pull her hands away from the girl's ears. To go on her way. Ashley suddenly opened her eyes and jumped up from the bed. "There's no more my way, you know. No. Dead end. A dead end," she sobbed hysterically, cradling her face in her hands. Ashley, my girl Barbara, whose heart was literally breaking at the sight of her granddaughter's grief, put her arm around her shoulders. "Believe me, girl, everything passes and this will pass. Time heals. We have to move on." Ashley lifted her tear-stained face to her grandmother and tried to smile, a pathetic, shaky smile. "Grandma, honey, it's not going to go away, okay?" She clutched Barbara to her chest, and her shoulders shook with another attack. With a woman's instinct, with all her experience and selfless, but not very happy life, Barbara immediately realized what was wrong. "My God, when did you have time?" she gasped. She continued to hold Ashley tightly to her and rocked her as if she were a child. The girl gradually calmed down. Her sobs turned to sobs and mumbling. At last Ashley recovered enough to speak more or less clearly. "What are you going to do next?" Grandma asked. "What do you mean?" Ashley asked, puzzled. "Have a baby," she said in an unexpectedly firm voice. "That's right. Good for you, girl. I'll help you." It was getting dark outside the window, and the two women, old and young, sat hugging each other, trying to process the grief or the unintended, unrecognized joy through their tears. Ashley had a baby boy, healthy and so large that petite Ashley had been in a lot of pain during labor. Olivia had continued to live with her mother and Ashley all these years, but she still managed to exist completely separate from her family. She looked at her grandson blankly and said, as if she'd thrown a stone, "It's good that the kid. At least when the time comes, he'll leave someone else, not her." Ashley named her son Jason. The boy was businesslike, solid, always busy with his own little problems. He was like Ashley in character, but in appearance he was becoming more like Christopher every day. Of course, Jason was Ashley's joy, and the only meaning in her life, the anchor that bound her to the present. She'd survived Christopher's death, and the worst months after his funeral only because of the small flame of new life inside her. And even though she had Jason, Ashley was slowly fading away. Skinny as she was literally exhausted. All her brightness was extinguished, faded, exactly as her grandmother Barbara had once been after she'd buried. Chattering, wondering how this family of beautiful, strong women repeated each other's unhappy fate. Jason was 3 years old when Barbara finally couldn't take it anymore. "That's it, Ashley, I can't stand to see you go out like a candle," she suddenly declared to her granddaughter. "I don't want to see you kicked out of the house. Come on, get ready." Ashley looked at her grandmother wildly, not sure what she meant. "What are you looking at me for?" The old woman sank down on her. "You need to get out of here. You need a change of scenery, a change of job, a change of environment. And it's no good going to the cemetery every day." "Are you kicking me out?" Ashley asked quietly. "Yes, if you want, I am," the old teacher said firmly and changed her tone to one of persuasion. "Tanechka, my golden child, It's the right thing to do. It's better this way, believe me, girl. You'll get a job and you'll have a place to live. I've already arranged it. You live, you get distracted. New people, new experiences, new life. Jason came running into the room, and Ashley grabbed the baby and held him to her. Ashley. Grandma looked at her angrily. Stop hiding behind Jason. He's not going anywhere. He's going to stay with me for a while. If things go well, will you take Jason back to your house? Or maybe you'll come home. Tanechka, girl, you've got to try living a different life. I never asked you for anything, but now I'm begging you to go. Ashley listened to her grandmother at first with incomprehension, indignation. What was she talking about? Leaving home? Leaving Jason? Had she lost her mind? Her beloved, always so wise, kind, and infinitely patient grandmother. But gradually the bewilderment gave way to reflection. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized that her grandmother was right. She really needs to change her life completely and understand what to do next, how and for what to live. 6 months later, after much agony and deliberation, Ashley made up her mind and left for the city. She was taken in by an old friend of Barbara's, also a former teacher, who had a small apartment. From the first day, Ashley started looking for a job in her specialty. She called the classifieds, sent her resume. But everywhere she got a polite, but essentially the same response. Sorry, but we can't offer you this vacancy. She realized that objectively she had little chance. Lack of local registration, relatively little work experience, and a young child in the absence of her husband, all this made her candidacy not very attractive to employers. Even though she had a red diploma in economics from a technical school. She was almost despairing and was thinking of returning home when she got an interview at a rather large, apparently well-known in the city firm for the production and sale of furniture. Well, told her in the Department of Human Resources, the place in our accounting department really was. But just this morning we've decided on another candidate. I'm sorry. Ashley was already habitually upset, but suddenly she decided. But maybe there are other jobs available? I really need a job, you know. The HR lady, who had already risen from her seat, sat back in her chair. Maybe it was Ashley's charm, or maybe anger, pity for the young woman. Either way, she gave Ashley a dubious look and stretched out. Well, I don't know. I have an opening, of course. But I don't think you'll accept it. We need an office cleaner. Of course, it was a blow to Ashley's ego. She was a country person and respected any labor, including unskilled labor. Take a few years to learn to come to the city and mop the floor, Ashley thought. She even faltered for a second, but shook her head stubbornly. The money she'd taken with her from home was running out, and she had to either take any job or go back home. I agree. Ashley looked firmly into the HR person's eyes. When can I go to work? You can go to work tomorrow, she replied indifferently. Ashley began to work, and the job itself was not difficult for her. Having been used to labor in the house and vegetable garden since childhood, it didn't seem hard at all. What was discouraging was the attitude of those around her. It was hard for her, accustomed to attention and love, to realize that for others she was an empty place. An appendage to the bucket and mop, who might not even be honored with a simple hello. The office was vast and bustling, with many services and departments. After a while, Ashley remembered by face and by name the managers, leading specialists, and ordinary employees, although for them she was still the girl who was asked to clean, move, or wipe something in addition to her duties. A couple of months had passed, and Ashley was getting to know not only the structure, but also some of the company's business. Olivia, she said one day to the deputy chief accountant, a nervous, rushing woman, "There's something I'd like to tell you." She stopped and looked at Ashley like an insect. "Your girls are throwing documents in the trash when they should be shredding them in the shredder. There's numbers and calculations in there. Just the other day, someone threw out a balance sheet, just like that. You can't do that. Are you trying to teach us how to work?" She arched an eyebrow in response. "I don't need you to tell us what we can and can't do. Mind your own business, sweetheart, and stay out of it." Ashley swallowed the undeserved insult and went on with her work. The pay was good, and she was even able to send money to her family a few times. She missed home terribly and traveled there every chance she got. Soon she saw an unusual excitement in the office, running throughout the huge room. Even she, who had nothing to do with the affairs of the firm, realized that something out of the ordinary was going on. After greeting someone by the hand with a word or a nod, A short, dry, middle-aged man in a suit and thin gold-rimmed glasses walked out with a quick, confident stride. Ashley realized from his tense face and frozen, ingratiating smile that this was an unusual visitor. "Who is it?" she asked Aaron, the young accountant, who had been on friendly terms with Ashley lately, and had even chatted with her a couple of times. "Really?" Aaron's eyes widened. "That's Jason Smith, the CFO. You're new here. He's been gone a long time. He's got family in Miami. Well, his daughter was born there, so he took a long vacation." Aaron went on to recount gossip about the CFO's love life. But Ashley was no longer interested, so she thanked Aaron and went on with her work. That afternoon, Ashley stayed late at work after her shift ended. After spending time washing windows and leaving the cleaning of the CFO's office for last, she was startled to see a streak of light under his door. Ashley stood there pondering what she should do. Then the door swung open. Jason Smith stood in the doorway. "Do you want my office?" She heard a soft, slightly husky voice. "Come in. I was just leaving." He turned his back to her, walked to his huge desk and sat down. Hello, Ashley suddenly decided to address this strict, business-suited man. He looked up and stared at her blankly. He probably would have been just as surprised if a chair had spoken to him. What he asked for some reason. And then, as if realizing, "Excuse me." "Hello." "Jason Smith, I'd like to talk to you," Ashley said. "Or should I say, when I'm taking the trash out of the trash can. And you know I don't mean to gossip or complain, but sometimes I find documents in the trash that could be used against the company's interests if I wanted to." He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Then he stood up, walked around the office, and turned to face Ashley. He was looking at her now, not absent-mindedly, but intently and carefully. Now he said, "What kind of documents did you find and what departments? More details, please. And please, sit down." He made an inviting gesture, pointing to a chair in front of his desk. "Jason Smith, once again, I'm not going to complain or set anyone up," Ashley said. "But I've tried to bring this situation to the departmental staff and no one wants to hear me out. And we're talking about personal data, accounting data, your company's financials, I think." Ashley continued, noticing that the man was listening to her very carefully, that we need to tighten control over the handling of documents, especially their disposal. It's not right that I, a simple cleaning lady, know, for example, what the company's revenue was last month and what the current penalty for tax arrears is. Jason Smith leaned back in his chair, his gaze now expressing keen interest. "But I think you're being modest," he said. "You're not an easy cleaner, to say the least. What's your name, by the way?" "Ashley," she said, and looked him in the eye. "And I understand from what you've said that you know about accounting." "Ashley, where are you from?" Jason Smith asked. "Well, I'm an accountant by training," she said. "I don't have a college degree, but I graduated with honors and worked for a couple of years as an economist at a large plant." Seeing that he continued to listen to her attentively and interestedly, she suddenly made up her mind. "I can't say that I'm such an outstanding specialist, but I also noticed errors in the wires, for example." Jason Smith became wary. For example, your accountant uses account 40 goods to record annual production, but you should use account 43 finished goods. Then there will be no error in cost accounting. After all, you already paid a penalty of almost $70,000 last quarter for this error. But nothing has changed. Jason Smith put his gold-rimmed glasses back on his nose and interlocked his fingers. "Amazing. Interesting things you're telling me. A simple cleaning lady, Ashley." But he took a pen and began to write something quickly in his day planner. "You are now clearly out of place, finishing your work today, and I expect you here in my office by 9 o'clock tomorrow." All of this was said in a tone that had no hint of doubt or suggestion that she herself might want something different. The next day, Ashley, dressed in her best pantsuit, to the amazement of the entire office, sat in front of the door to the CFO's office at the gesture of the receptionist. She realized that she was inviting her to come inside. Ashley opened the office door. Jason Smith was sitting at his desk talking on the phone. Yes, exactly what we need," she heard him say. "Perfect for you in every way. And no strings attached. That's all right, I'll call you back." He disconnected the phone and made an inviting gesture with a smile. "Please, sit down, Ashley's cleaning lady." He was quiet for a moment and then continued. You are certainly out of place here, it's quite obvious. I have a proposition for you. We have a sales branch. Would you like to be the chief accountant there? The offer struck Ashley so much that it even seemed absurd to her. She looked at him questioningly, trying to see if he was joking. The man sitting across from her was a solid, serious man who clearly didn't have time for such silly pranks. Me? Suddenly the chief accountant of the cleaning ladies? Chief accountants, and even without higher education. It doesn't happen like that. She looked at her interlocutor in panic. Don't be so frightened, Jason Smith said. He stood up, walked around the table, and sat down across from Ashley. Chief accountant is a big word for it. In fact, the firm is small, with only 3 employees and only 1 accountant. He's both chief and staff in one person, so to speak. And I've already made sure that you are quite wealthy as an accountant. By the way, he smiled about our conversation yesterday. I've already given orders to check the order of accounting entries. And you know you were right. There are a lot of mistakes, so you should not doubt your own abilities. Wouldn't you agree? Wouldn't you agree? He glanced at his watch, and then at Ashley, clearly expecting her to answer immediately. When he saw her hesitation, he struck the final blow. I'm sorry, I forgot the most important thing, he smiled charmingly. The money question. You are, of course, interested in the question of salary. But let's start with a trial period to agree on $100,000 a month, and then we'll see the results. Do we have a deal? Ashley, who had never received even a quarter of that amount, was stunned. $100,000 a month. To buy good winter clothes and shoes, to repair the roof of the house, and finally to pay for her grandmother's knee surgery, which she had long dreamed of. All these desires swirled in her head. If she could earn so well, she could really help her family. A chance like that she might never get again. She should give it a try. She should be able to do it. I agree, she said quietly, and smiled. Thank you, Jason, for your trust. He looked at Ashley carefully, and for some reason he lowered his eyes, tracing some lines on the desk calendar. It was as if he was hesitating about something. At least it seemed to her, for some reason, that he was confused and thoughtful for a few seconds. But it passed quickly. And in front of her again sat, confident in each of his decisions, of the leader. Well, excellent, he said. From tomorrow you will start your duties. I'll make sure you're up to speed. Ashley threw herself into her work with all her heart. She was a good bookkeeper, and she performed her duties with integrity. But pathological honesty, gullibility, and unsophisticated style are not the best qualities for the chief accountant of a commercial firm with an unclear reputation. She really for a long time did not notice that in parallel with the daily official activities of their firm was some barely noticeable work. Sometimes she came across documents with contents that embarrassed her. For example, one day she found invoices that she had signed earlier as chief accountant, but the recipients had been changed after she had been given large sums of cash to pay for what she was told were some unforeseen expenses. She decided to talk to the holding company's CFO. But Ashley kindly explained to Jason Smith she is no longer a child. It's a common practice. Any commercial firm takes some of its income out of tax. But it doesn't concern you. I have to tell you, work in peace. By the way, you've got a big job coming up, opening a line of credit. You remember? Yes, of course, Jason Smith, Ashley said thoughtfully. I'm preparing the paperwork. Good, he smiled thinly. And if all goes well, you'll receive a substantial bonus 3 months after the firm receives the loan. 2 men in uniform entered Ashley's office without knocking. All documents of the firm were arrested, and Ashley herself was accused of large-scale fraud and sent to a pre-trial detention cell. A few days later, Ashley was summoned to meet with her appointed defense attorney. Hello, Ashley, the man said with an embarrassed cough and continued in a more forceful tone, my name is Samuel Brown, and I'm your attorney. I will defend you at your trial, and I will try to— He clearly stumbled and was again embarrassed. I'll try to get the charges against you dropped. Or at least part of them. He looked at her with a long, attentive stare, as if trying to penetrate her soul. She averted her eyes indifferently. Ashley, he came to the table and sat down across from her. This isn't going to work. You and I need to establish a rapport, a trust. Otherwise it's not going to work, you know. Tell me, you're innocent of what you're accused of. What does it matter if I'm guilty or not? She spoke tiredly. Who cares but me? It matters. It matters to me very much, he answered excitedly. Though I'm sure you're innocent anyway. I knew it as soon as I saw you. She looked at the man with some interest and smiled a little. As soon as you saw me, she interjected ironically. I wonder how you can work as a lawyer if you make such conclusions based on looks alone. It's ridiculous. But he was clearly embarrassed again. I'm not much of a lawyer. To be honest, Ashley grinned bitterly. And neither am I the chief accountant. But even though I'm not very experienced and I don't know much about economics, he continued stubbornly, I'll do my best to defend you, or at least get your sentence reduced. He tried to say the last word as softly and quietly as possible, but Ashley still flinched as if struck. So you are charged with accessory after the fact. Ashley listened to his voice and everything he said. The charges and the articles of the criminal code that corresponded to those charges coalesced into a giant, sticky web in the center of which she, a poor, foolish, naive butterfly, fluttered. Samuel Brown, Ashley's lawyer, fought the trial like a knight without fear or reproach. And he himself, in his imagination since childhood very rich, imagined himself the savior of Ashley, a beautiful lady who was captured by an evil dragon. And he is the only one who can protect and save her. He spent more than one sleepless night to understand the intricacies of the firm's accounting, mountains of documents and invoices, real and fictitious transactions. As a result, having spent several weeks and almost all his savings, he proved Ashley's non-involvement in most of the violations. And the heaviest charge was dropped, but he still could not get her full release. She got 2 years in juvie. Before she left for juvie, Ashley met with her lawyer. She had already come to terms, lived with her fate, and like the women of her family, accepted her fate. Her red hair was braided into 2 braids. Her face was scrubbed clean without the slightest trace of makeup, and she had lost weight and looked more like a frightened 14-year-old girl than a grown woman with years of darkness ahead of her. She seemed almost saintly to Samuel. He'd realized long ago, admitted to himself, that he loved Ashley with all his heart. He was afraid to give away his feelings, but he wanted to at the same time. He couldn't decide whether it would be better for Ashley to know that he loved her, or whether he shouldn't embarrass and disturb her before he left. Ashley looked up at him with haggard eyes and smiled involuntarily. How cute was he after all, her lawyer? Tall, a little stooped, angular but broad-shouldered, with thick, long, uncut blonde hair that kept falling over his eyes, and he kept tucking it back. There was something inexplicably native about him to her. He was a real man, the way her mom said her father had been, the way she remembered Christopher. Ashley drove some incomprehensible excitement inside and spoke up. Samuel Brown, I am grateful for everything you have done for me. I realize that if it weren't for you, I would have gotten a much longer sentence. I don't owe you the 4 years of juvie you got off me. I probably owe you my life. I know that, and I'll never forget it. But it's already happened, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I'll have to disappear from life for 2.5 years. Wait, don't interrupt me, Sasha. Can I call you that? He quickly nodded his head in agreement. You have already done so much for me. Do one more thing. You know I have a family in the village, my mother, grandmother, and son. I don't want them to know what happened to me. Our family wasn't happy enough as it was. And now this. My grandmother is much closer to me than my mom. That's just the way it is. I'm just afraid she's not going to make it through this. Jason. Yeah, I mean, sure, kids get used to everything. But I don't want him to see me in jail, in these clothes, like this. No, not like this. She choked with sobs, but making an effort to restrain herself, angrily wiped her tears and continued. I wrote the letter. I made up a whole story. I lied about everything. Of course, Grandma won't believe it. But if this letter is brought by a good, sincere person, such as you, Sasha, she might listen, understand, accept and agree to wait. I know I can't. I have no right to hang this on you. But I have no one else. And I can only trust you. I beg you, Sasha, if you can, do this for me. She handed him a few folded sheets of notebook paper, written in small handwriting. Samuel gently took the sheets from her hands and looked into her eyes. Ashley, Tanetka. He swallowed convulsively. I'll be waiting for you. Ashley had stood her ground, endured, survived 2 years, keeping herself as a person, pure and whole. She's learned a lot, rethought a lot. She saw and learned things she would never have seen or known in a normal life. Many of the things she saw she would have preferred to never experience. But that's how life happened. She got out of the colony and went to the only place on Earth where she was welcome, at least as she hoped, home. On a clear autumn day, she got off the bus and wandered towards her grandmother's house, trying not to be recognized. "Hello, Grandma," she said simply to Barbara, who was furiously beating the dust out of the mat with a stick. The very old woman looked up at her, dropped the stick, and woke up for the time being. So much chemistry. Suddenly a question hammered in Ashley's brain, the answer to which she couldn't remember in any way. Barbara managed her weakness, swiped the tears from her eyes, and slowly approached Ashley. Quietly, she asked her granddaughter and hugged her as she had as a child. Their shoulders shook, but quietly. Again, like as a child, coaxed her grandmother in Ashley's ear on her back, her shoulders, her head. "Quiet girl, my golden girl. It's nothing. Ashley, nothing. Dirt doesn't stick to gold." Ashley looked into Barbara's eyes. There was nothing but love in them. Ashley pressed her grandmother's hands to her face and sighed. She was home. And Jason, she suddenly realized when both of them had calmed down from their first excitement. "Where's Jason?" "Grandma, it's like kindergarten." "You're Jason," Barbara replied. "I'm too old to keep up with your father, you know. Your mother got smart and got a job. So we put him in the garden. A long time ago, about 2 years ago. Yes, he's fine there. He's already the main man there," she laughed. "He's probably forgotten all about me," Ashley said fearfully. "Well, there you go," she said. "Who would let him forget you? We talk about you every day, and he's never parted from your picture. And Andrew keeps telling him his mom's coming back. Mom will be here soon, Mom this and Mom that." "Andrew? Who's Andrew?" Ashley looked at Barbara in surprise. "Well, there's this new good man. We've been having a hard time without him all this time. You'll get to know him soon enough," she said with a sly look at her granddaughter. "By the way, remember where the kindergarten is? Well, it's time to pick up Jason. You go, girl, get your son, you go." Jason had grown and changed a lot since the last time she'd seen him. Ashley didn't even recognize him right away. She stood under an old birch tree by the fence of the kindergarten and waited, not knowing what to do. Jason ran out of the kindergarten gate and sprinted off, not paying any attention to the lone figure standing under the tree. "Hi," he shouted to someone, spreading his arms happily. Ashley followed Jason with her eyes and was surprised to see him running toward the man, squatting down to him and spreading his arms wide as well. It was a man. In the twilight of the fall evening, Ashley could only see the outline of the figures and the bright blue stain of a jacket. After a while, she realized that it wasn't so much the twilight as the tears that blurred her eyes. "Jason," she whispered to her son. Jason, meanwhile, ran up to the squatting man and hung around his neck. The man wrapped his arms around the baby, lifted him to his full height above the ground, and began to spin him on his axis. It was obvious that this ride had been performed many times before and was familiar to both of them. Jason squealed enthusiastically, and the man laughed. Ashley closed her eyes and pressed her back against the trunk of the old birch tree. For a few moments she thought she recognized Christopher in the man. And going crazy, she thought sadly, swallowing the tears that continued to flow. The merry fiddling continued between the boy and the man, accompanied by children's laughter, squeals and delighted squeals. The man also continued to laugh and finally said, "That's it. Jason, Christopher, stop the pampering or your pants and shirt will go again." The man's voice sounded familiar to Ashley. She squinted, trying to make him out through the fall twilight and the tears in her eyes. Finally, she recognized the blonde, disheveled hair, the tall, slightly bent figure. It was Samuel Brown, her lawyer. Jason spotted her first. He stopped in his run, as if he had run into an invisible wall, crouched down with his hands on his knees, and leaned over and rushed toward her. "Mom, did you make it?" Ashley squatted down, wrapped her arms around the fleeing Jason, and pulled him against her, breathing in her son's dear, beloved scent hard and tight. The smell she'd dreamed about every night for 2 years. Samuel walked slowly toward her. He squinted myopically. "Hello, Ashley," he said in a voice hoarse with excitement. "Hello, Sam," she replied, also feeling a lump in her throat. "You've gotten even more beautiful, Ashley. I've been expecting you and it's really good to see you." "Glad." Just glad, she looked up at him with a smile. "And here I am, Sam, seeing you, just happy." She brought her face close to Samuel's and kissed his cheek. They walked down the street, rustling the gold and red leaves that carpeted the ground. Jason held onto his mother's hand with one hand and Samuel's with the other, and walked cheerfully between them, jumping up and down every chance he got, making sure to lift as many fallen leaves into the air as he could. It was extremely exciting. And Jason was perfectly content, especially because neither his mother nor Uncle Sam ever scolded him for his outright hooliganism. They had no time for each other, looking into each other's eyes and smiling.